Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of 7 Sports Magic Moments of Motorsport. I'm Aaron Noonan. On this release we're going to take you right back in time to one of the greatest of the great races, the 1987 James Hardie 1000 at Mount Panorama. This of course was the year the World Touring Car Championship came to Bathurst. It was also the same year that the Caltex Chase was introduced, and a range of works around the circuit had brought Mount Panorama up to FISA specification. In terms of the cars on the grid, well, it was all the local favourites up against the visiting Europeans, spearheaded by the Texaco Sierras, the Sierra of Andy Rouse, and the likes of the BMWs from the Schnitzer, Bugatti and CBM Works teams. The locals, well, they were spearheaded by the reigning touring car champ Jim Richards and the two-car JPS BMW team. There were the two Peter Jackson Nissan Skylines with Glenn Seaton and George Fury. Of course, Dick Johnson was a Sierra man by this stage with a pair of Shell RS500 Cosworths. Peter Brock was no longer the Holden dealer team factory driver, but he was there with a pair of Mobile Commodores, and Larry Perkins and Alan Grice in some very fast V8 Holdens as well. This race had just about everything. It had controversy, it had chaos, it had amazing wet weather too that turned this race completely on its head, and the winner of the race wasn't even decided until some weeks after, but that's something we'll touch on a little bit later. On this release we have got the entire race day coverage of Sunday, October the 4th, 1987. During the commercial breaks on Channel 7, the cameras kept filming, and we have all of that vision released for you for the very first time right here. So let's rewind back in time on 7 Sports Magic Moments of Motorsport and go back to the World Touring Car Championship race of 1987.
For a quarter of a century, 7 Sports has been making the annual trek to Mount Panorama, Bathurst to cover Australia's most prestigious touring car classic. The spectacular, if intimidating, public road course hosted the first 500 back in 1963. Spectators and television viewers well remember the era of the galloping GT Cortinas, the Super Coopers, the Grunt and Go HOs, and those marvellous Monaros. Times have changed, and so too has Mount Panorama. $5 million have been spent upgrading the circuit and facilities. The track now measures 6.213 kilometres and has 3 new corners added to incorporate the new Caltex Chase. The World Championship Trail stops at Bathurst today. Ford, Holden, Nissan and BMW are the awesome foursome of the outright class. At stake, the most valued prize of international touring car racing, Australia's very own James Hardie 1000.
Good morning, welcome to our coverage of the great race. And what a coverage it's going to be, not only live throughout Australia today, but also by satellite to New Zealand. And within a few days, highlights will be seen extensively in the United Kingdom, Europe, in the United States and elsewhere throughout the world. 43 countries, in fact, a total audience of something like 350 million viewers. What a day we've got at Mount Panorama. Mild and slightly overcast at the moment. The forecast for the remainder of the day is for a cool change later with some isolated showers moving in. Top temperature of only 16 degrees. The drivers will probably welcome that. Conditions earlier in the week were certainly hot here, and the European invasion has provided some of the hottest competition ever for the great race. And in a moment, we'll see how things panned out in Hardie's Heroes with those sensational Sierras. Welcome back to Mount Panorama, Bathurst, where the crowds are pouring in for the 25th anniversary great race, and it's time to say good morning to Mike Raymond. What a race it's going to be if qualifying is anything to indicate.
I think you're right, but I think perhaps the big problem of today could be the weather. It started to cloud in here rather dramatically, and who knows what may well happen after start time this morning. The forecast said a change later in the day with showers. I think it's arrived very, very early, and this could pose a very big nightmare for the drivers here today. I think so. It might also give the Sierra drivers a problem with 450 brake horsepower on a slippery racetrack that has been their Achilles heel in Europe this season. Well, the Sierras certainly had no problems with qualifying. They have just far outstripped everybody else here so far. Let's have a look at how they qualified in Hardie's Heroes. Here's our Park Royal recap of the way they went.
It was a Hardie's Heroes with a difference. No Brocky or last year's pole-winning Nissan, just wall-to-wall Sierras. The roll call told the real story. 7 Cosworth Cuties, a glimmer of a Vimmer, and 2 robust Aussie V8s. First out was Larry Perkins in the NZ Connectors Commodore. He was to cut a smooth one without climbing over the ragged edge.
Well, the fact that we finished a lap is probably the most encouraging thing. obviously it's you know, we're not going to hang it on the fence, but that was a good clean run, and that's, you know, that was the time.
Gricey was next in the Bob Jane Band-Aid Special. The car had taken a colossal swipe at the concrete the previous day thanks to Win Percy. But the Tate boys had done wonders and Gritty Grice gave it everything. His best efforts rewarding the team with a 2:23.49. BMW came to the Mount with 6 Munich specials, but only one made it to the Hardie shootout. The CBM 42 machine with Venezuela's Johnny Cicotto.
Look at the way he flings the cars through the corners. They're coming off the top of Mount Panorama.
Coming down to Caltex chase, Johnny Cicotto. Sierras have been very, very quick in qualifying so far, but a 1000k enduro will certainly suit the little M3.
Johnny Cicotto, the beautifully handling BMW M3, makes the last corner, heads up for the checkered flag at the end of his flying lap.
It was then time for the Sierra 7 to strut their best. Dick Johnson took the 17 Shell Ultra for a quickie, but in turn was bettered by teammate Charlie O'Brien in the sister unit. Officials would later exclude them from the top 8 following a random fuel check. Andrew Madecki was next up in the Oxo Supercube Sierra. Some call it the fastest gravy train on the Mount, and the Port Macquarie pilot was super smooth to make the 5th fastest time. The high-profile Eggenberger Texaco team fronted 3 cars for the top 10, but only 2 will start today. Klaus Niedzwitz easily qualified the 12 car, while Steve Soper put his Texaco star on the second row with a 2:18.6. Then it was time for the Grouse Rouse to cut loose in the ANZ Sierra. He'll share today with Alan Moffat and Thierry Tassin. Gets a little sideways coming out of the cutting. Through the right-hander, West End bend to the top of Mount Panorama.
This Rouse trying really maybe just a little too hard there and getting out of shape. This is the view from Seven's race cam, Toledo race cam in the number 9 Sierra. Across the top, look at the crowds, look at the view, and look at him go.
And now back on to the old Conrod straight beneath the Bridgestone Bridge. Here he comes. Andy Rouse. The ANZ Sierra comes out of the final corner on to take the checkered flag.
Well done, Andy Rouse. You've been the pace setter all week in the ANZ Ford Sierra. 2:18.468. You must be satisfied with that.
Well, it wasn't a bad one. I wouldn't say it was perfect, but there's always a lot of pressure on something like this.
Hardie Honours for 87 was reserved for one of the fatherland's finest, Klaus Ludwig. He scorched the mountain in 2 minutes 16.97 to pick up a cool $10,000. And the man highly tipped to take Hardie's Heroes for 1987, Klaus Ludwig, in the 3rd of the Eggenberger Texaco Ford Sierras, trying to get a little more heat into the tyres. The man who came yesterday to take pole position away from Andy Rouse. He takes the green flag, and he'll be well and truly primed for a $20,000 shot at Hardie's Heroes here today. To the right-hander at Bridgestone Bend. Floats it out there very wide, heads up Motorcraft Hill. Coming up to BP Cutting. Brings on the power. And he is absolute. Punching the car through West End Bend, coming up to the top of the hill. And watch him across the top of the mountain now.
All the Europeans have given lie to the myth that you need to be a regular and you need to know the mountain like the back of your hand to go quickly. Down through the S's goes Ludwig, and he really is so very, very smooth, isn't he?
It's out of the dipper, all sideways that time. That's taken
Spoke too soon.
Caught it pretty well though. That could have been very, very disastrous for the Eggenberger team. But Ludwig in control again. It will have cost him precious hundredths of a second though.
This is where he'll make it up though, Conrod straight. The run off to
the right to Caltech's chase.
Klaus Ludwig knows the times that have been posted by the other drivers, knows the time he has to beat if he's going to be the pole sitter for the James Hardie 1000 in 1987. Can he do it?
Last corner comes up, Klaus Ludwig. The Texaco Sierra takes the checkered flag.
Klaus, congratulations, a brilliant lap, 2:16.969. You've got pole position for the James Hardie 1000.
Thank you very much.
Was it a good lap for you?
It was a total perfect lap, I think. I was really trying to concentrate myself on this lap. You know, it's not easy. You know, you have only this lap, and everything has to work together. It worked out. I'm totally happy.
Here's how the first 5 rows shape up for today's great race. Pole position to Klaus Ludwig and Nietswitz in the Texaco Ford. From 2, Rouse, Moffat and Tassin in the ANZ Sierra. Row 3 sees Steve Soper and Pierre Dieudonné in the second Sierra, in company with Andrew Madecki in the Oxo Supercube Cosworth. Position 6 is the CBM BMW of Johnny Cicotto and John Franco Brancatelli, and then follow the Commodores of Alan Grice and Win Percy, sharing the row with Larry Perkins and Denny Holm. And rounding out the relegation row, the Shell Ultra Fords of Charlie O'Brien and Queensland's Dickie Johnson.
That's the communication setup at Mount Panorama for our 7 telecasts of this 25th anniversary great race. Not only the 25th anniversary of the great race, but the 25th anniversary of 7's involvement in covering the same.
And of course, the first time we've had a World Touring Car Championship come to Australia. Let's take a look at the way the entire field will line up today. Pole position has gone to Klaus Ludwig and Klaus Niedelwitz in the Ford Sierra. Sharing the front row of the grid from position 2, Moffat and Rouse in the Sierra. Second row, inside, Steve Soper and Pierre Dieudonné. From position 4, car number 12, the third of the Sierras, withdrawn by the Texaco team. From 5:35, Andrew Madecki and Don Smith in the Oxo Supercube entry.
Position number 6 goes to Johnny Cicotto and Gianfranco Brancatelli in the BMW Car 42. Position 7, Alan Grice and Win Percy in their Commodore Car 2. Larry Perkins and Denny Holm back them up in another Commodore, position 8 on the grid rather, car 11. Then Neville Crichton, Charlie O'Brien in the second of the Dick Johnson Queensland Sierra entries, car 18, and then Dickie Boy himself in position number 10.
From position number 11, 8 times great race winner Peter Brock and Tasmanian David Parsons. From 12:44, Jimmy Richards, the Australian Touring Car champ, and no baloney, Tony Longhurst. From 13, car number 46, the BMW of Emmanuel Pirro and Roberto Revalia. From 14, car 30, the first of the Peter Jackson Nissan Skylines with George Fury and Terry Shield. From 15, car 15, the second of the Nissan Skylines.
Position 16 on the grid, Winnie Vaught and Olivier Grouillard in the BMW, another of the European entries. And then the Kiwis, Bajent and Bauquet in position 17. Position 18, Brabham and Juan Manuel Fangio. There's a name to conjure with in a BMW car 41. Position 19 is Marcus Osterreich and Roland Ratzenberger in the BMW. And then in position number 20, John Crook and Peter McLeod in the car 10 mobile dealer team.
From 21:57, Colin Bond and Lucio Cesario on the Alfa. From 22, Robbie Francovic and Ludwig Finau on the JPS BMW. From 23, car 16, the Mitsubishi Starion, Gary Scott and Akihiko Nakaya of Japan. 24 is car 34, Giddings and Stewart in the Sierra. 25, 19, Cameron and Wilkinson in the Commodore.
Position 26 for the great race, Brian Callahan, Barry Graham in a Commodore. Position 27, Warren Cullen and Gary Sprague, also in a Commodore. We've got a swag of them here. From position 28, John Billington and Graham Crosby, also a Commodore. Position 29, Graham Moore and the Belgian driver, Michel Delcourt, another Commodore. And in position 30, the Nissan.
31, the Commodore of Cavich and Bailey. 32, Mulderhill and Matthews and another Commodore. 33, Bill O'Brien and Brian Sampson. 34, the Maserati by Turbo Barman Hanna and Kevin Bartlett. 35, car 26, Noski and Gary Rush in the Commodore.
Position number 36, Trevor Crowe and Ian Tulloch from New Zealand in a BMW. 37 is Peter Jansen and Peter Fitzgerald in a Commodore. Position 38, Steve Reed and Trevor Ashby, another Commodore. 39, the Lusty brothers, Graham and John in a Commodore. And position 40, Phil Ward and Lyndon Reifmuller in a Mercedes.
From 41-27, the two Golsons, dad and son, Ray and Graham. 42 is Annette Meverson and Mercedes Sturmitz in the BMW. 43, car 90, Faulkner and Price in a Toyota. 44, car 60, Scaife and Jarrett in the Nissan. 45-91, John Smith and Johnny Faulkner.
Position 46, Andrew Bagnall, Mark Jennings in a Toyota. Position 47, Bob Holden and Gary Wilmington in a Toyota. Holden, a former winner. Position 48, Giorgio Francia and Daniel Toffoli in an Alfa. And position 49, David Ratcliffe and Mark Gibbs in a Toyota, completing the field for the great race. Welcome back to Mount Panorama, standing here on Pitt Straight, flanked by the James Hardie Festival Queen for 1987, Michelle Shepherd, and by the General Manager of ATN Channel 7, Mr. Ted Thomas, to make a very special presentation, the pole winners check presentation for Hardie's Heroes yesterday, and of course the victor was Klaus Ludwig from the Eggenberger Texaco team. Congratulations to Klaus Ludwig.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Well, it's a very important day for us all here today. It's the 25th year of our telecast. It's the 20th year of James Hardie's association with the race. It's the re-emergence of Ford in a different shape, and we have an overseas competitor who's Hardie's hero, Klaus Ludwig, who made that achievement in 2 minutes 16.96 seconds. Klaus is presently the World Endurance Car Champion, 3 times Le Mans winner, and it's his 30th birthday tomorrow. What a present. Congratulations, Klaus, and here is our $10,000 check from Channel 7 for your win.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. I'm absolutely happy and I'm proud to win this here, especially on this wonderful Mount Panorama. Thank you. Oh, I thought I'd get another one.
Congratulations to Klaus Ludwig. He's got a lot of important business ahead of him today, but he's got part of the prize money right now. Well, plenty of excitement ahead as we draw closer to the great race. Time now to see again some of the top marks competing in the James Hardie 1000 for 1987. Here is Neil Crompton.
Wilco, the last time a 4-cylinder powered motorcar won this race was way back in 1966, and since then only a 6-cylinder Tirana and a howling V12 Jaguar have interrupted what has otherwise been a happy hunting ground for the V8 muscle cars. Cars like the British GT Falcons, the Monaros and the succession of Commodores and Falcons. Quite clearly, these V8 thumpers are well suited to Mount Panorama, but the opposition is getting increasingly tough. Today, the buzzword in motorsport is high-tech. The challengers to the dear old V8 are embracing space-age weapons. The most graphic example of this is the new RS500 Ford Sierra Cosworth. Thinly disguised as a road car, the Turbo Ford doubles as a rocket racer. It's an engineer's response to the BMW M3 threat.
We've sort of beaten BMW at their own game. I mean, over the last winter, BMW did a very good job with the M3. I mean, it surprised everybody at the start of the season, us included. But I think we've redressed the balance now.
The Sierra's vital statistics read like a nightmare for the opposition. The car is light, chocked with horsepower and torque, and has plenty of brakes and rubber. Like the Sierra, the BMW M3 is totally race-bred. A glance around the vehicle shows graphically why this car has performed so well in the world title and the Australian Championship. In typical German style, there's a very practical sense of clever engineering and design.
We hired special engineers and then we went through all our laboratories. I think we did a rather good job in the suspension, and the outcome more or less was a car which we felt would be competitive to race, would be easy to handle by a team, and I would say we were planning of making a overall winner as long as the turbos were there, but we definitely were trying to make a winner in a normal aspirated Group A class.
Without the benefit of swags of turbo-induced horsepower, the 2.3-litre fuel-injected engine couples well with intelligent body styling, effective brakes and great suspension to make a well-conceived product using the Group A rules to advantage. Making its last attack on the great race this year is the potent Nissan Skyline Turbo. Having stabilised the car's reliability and shone during the Australian Touring Car Championship, the Nissan is placed better this year than ever before. But no matter how you look at it, the shining star from the land of the rising sun has got a tough task.
This year, we're the underdogs. The car is like 2 years out of date, really, compared with the new sophisticated Sierras and M3s. But we're looking forward to next year now, I suppose, with our new car. Just a bit on the new car next year, I think, will be a Sierra equal to the Sierra. It's got an aerodynamic aids which we haven't got here, which hurts the car we've got here now. But with a new car, the aerodynamic aids on it and bigger turbo, extractor exhaust system, and a lot more technical involvement in the car, I think it'll give the Sierras a bad time.
Compare these figures on the Skyline with the Ford and you can see why the new car is so important to the Nissan team. Out of virtually the same configuration, it gives away almost 100 brake horsepower. However, the proven, reliable and fast Skyline can never be forgotten. brings us to the only car in Gasoline Alley with a V8 under the hood. The Holden Commodore stands ready to defend the honour of all V8 devotees who've witnessed no less than 18 wins in 21 years by Ford and GM V8s. Can the old beast do it again? On paper, the theory is no. This year's Australian Touring Car Championship passes into history as the year that none of the Holden pilots could win a round of the title.
We've done a lot of work on the durability of the car, and I'm quite confident it will be there mid-afternoon. And as you say, next year, high-tech's the name of the game, and we'll play that game as well.
By way of comparison, the Commodore power rivals that of the Sierra, but it's 230 kilograms heavier. But make no mistake, these cars in this configuration will run all day, and last year they pulled off a 1-2. So choose your weapons and pick a favourite. Pretty soon all the theory turns to fact. In just under 30 minutes, the 6.5-hour moment of truth kicks off.
Frantic activity on the grid at Mount Panorama. The great race draws near. The James Hardie 1000 for 1987.
Grid about to be cleared at the moment. We've already dealt with the 49 starters today for you. Klaus Niedzwitz will start the race in the pole-winning Texaco Ford Sierra. Steve Soper sitting there with Klaus Ludwig, who has just received his $10,000 cheque from ATN General Manager Ted Thomas. And Klaus has decided not to start the race, but to allow his partner to start in the number 7 car.
And after the next round of the World Championship at Calder next weekend, he's off to Hamilton Island for a brief respite before they head to New Zealand, so the $10,000 will come in handy.
I would think so. Andy Rouse, 4 times British Touring Car Champion, will start in the Alan Moffat ANZ Ford Sierra that shares the front row. Steve Soper, we had shots of before. And of course, coming in to get the cars underway, choppers from the Australian Army heading over the top of Mount Panorama.
Lieutenant Colonel Dick Polk is with us again. And Dick, first of all, what type of helicopter we got here?
They're light observation Kiowa helicopters from the School of Army Aviation at Oakey in Queensland.
And the flag says, what, Army Tattoo 88?
Certainly does. The Army's announcing today to whoever's watching that next year our major contribution to the bicentennial will be a bicentennial military tattoo, which will tour Australia, every capital city and Townsville for several months, starting in Sydney in August and going counterclockwise around the country, finishing in Canberra in December.
Is it going to be an outdoor display, or?
There's a combination of places where the tattoo will be held. Some places like Sydney it's the entertainment centre, but in Darwin it'll be in the showground, so it varies.
I imagine in an indoor arena like that it'd be quite spectacular.
There'll be more than 1,000 people involved in it, and we've got 5 overseas countries involved, so it's going to be, they reckon, the biggest thing biggest tattoo anyone's seen in 200 years in Australia.
Army choppers manoeuvre around. They are in fact just about over the bottom of Conrod Strait at Murray's Corner, and will begin to bank left and run up pit straight above the cars as they are lined up on the starting grid.
Just let smoke go. These are all instructors from the School of Aviation, School of Army Aviation at Oakey in Queensland.
Any significance in the colour, or is that just because it looks pretty?
I think just because it looks pretty.
What a sight! The 5 Army helicopters in formation down pit straight, flying the Tattoo 88 flag over our commentary position, over the 2 front-running cars on the grid. The cars about to head off on their parade.
Cars ready to move on the warm-up lap prior to the start of the James Hardie 1000 World Touring Car Championship from Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
A lot of the drivers would like to think it was a warm-up lap. In fact, it really is a parade lap, not a warm-up, and that, of course, has been one of the beefs from the drivers. 2 laps is what they get, but at this pace it's not really a warm-up, as I said, and the drivers really believe they need a pre-race warm-up. I mean, a solid hit out here at Mount Panorama prior to a race like the James Hardie 1000, the long-distance event. The European drivers in particular have been griping about it, but then they've been griping about a few things.
That's right, it's really the old case of them versus us in the 87 James Hardie. Most of the Europeans wanting a rolling start because that seems to be the fashion in Europe. And of course the next round of the World Touring Car Championship will be held next weekend at the Calder Park Combined Road Course in Thunderdome. Looks like our little BMW M3 having problems down in the bottom corner, stalling it.
Johnny Cicotto, was it?
No, I think it was Mercedes Sturmitz trying to get the M3 started.
You think I could tell the difference?
As I was saying, the 2 rounds in Australia, the James Hardie 1000 here today, and of course the Calder Park 500 next Sunday in Victoria, when all of the same competitors will be there for what promises to be a thrill around the High Bank Thunderdome course. Wait for the cheers across the top of Mount Panorama. It's one of their favourite sons. Dickie Johnson takes the Shell Ultra High Cosworth through there on the warm-up lap. Here they come. 2 of the boys aren't wasting any time getting some heat into the tyres. Andy Rouse, the ANZ Banking Sierra. And Peter Brock out there as well. Actually, just before the warm-up lap, Peter Brock sprinted from the Expo building here because the Sun newspaper was conducting a competition for a Brock special giveaway.
The Sun ran this competition over 3 weeks, like 15 weekdays, and they had a winner drawn each day. They won a trip to Mount Panorama for the race and a key and a chance to try that key in a Brock Commodore. And you can see that's what they're doing now, the 15 winners, and the lucky one that can open the door gets the car. The losers get the bottle of champagne, of course, plus the trip to Bathurst for the great race itself. They had more than a half. It opens. It worked. Jackie Williams, yeah. Jackie Williams has won the Brock Commodore in the Sydney Sun competition. Well done.
And I would think she was certainly delighted about that. We pick up pictures, of course, from race cam in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore of Alan Grice on the warm-up lap. It hasn't been the best of weeks for the Roadways team, with Win Percy putting the car into the concrete at the top of the mountain. This is only one, as we mentioned earlier, of 4 race cam units will be deployed today. This is the Bob Jane T-Mart's race cam in the number 2 Holden Commodore, to be shared by Alan Grice and Win Percy. They're on their second warm-up lap at the moment. And let's recap for you quickly the starting lineup for today's James Hardie 1000. Pole position to Ludwig and Needswitz in the Sierra. From 2, Moffat and Rouse in another Sierra. From 3, Soper and Dieudonné in another Sierra. The third of the Texaco cars withdrawn. No car to start from 4. From 5:35, Madecki and Smith in the Oxo Supercube car.
Position number 6, Cicotto Brancatelli in the BMW. Grice and Percy, position number 7 in a Commodore. Perkins and Hulme also in a Commodore, position number 8. Crichton O'Brien, the first of the Dick Johnson Sierras, position number 9. And Dickie himself in position number 10.
From 11, Peter Brock and Parsons in the Commodore. From 12, Richards and Longhurst in the JPS BMW. 13 is Emmanuel Pirot and Roberto Ravaglia in the M3. From 14, Fury and Shield in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. From 15 is 15, Seaton and Bowe.
Position number 16 on the grid for this year's race, Winnie Vaught and Olivier Grouillard in a BMW. Position 17, Bajan Bauquet in a Nissan. 18 is Gary Brabham and 1, Manuel Fangio in the BMW. 19, Marcus Osterreich and Roland Ratzenberger in another of the Sierras.
From 21, Bond and Cesario. Position 22, Robbie Francevic and Finau in the JPS BMW. From 23-16, Scott and Nakaya in the Mitsubishi Starion. From 24-34, Giddings and Stewart in a Ford. From 25, Cameron and Wilkinson from New Zealand in a Commodore.
Position 30, Callahan and Graham in a Commodore. Cullen in Sprague in position 27. Another Commodore. Billington Crosby the same in position 28. Moore and Delcourt, another Commodore 29. And Carter and Masterton in the Nissan in position number 30.
From 31, Cabbage and Kerry Bailey in the Commodore. 32, 29, Tony Mulvihill and Kenny Matthews. From 33, 38, Bill O'Brien from Canberra and Brian Sampson. 34 is Armin Hana and Kevin Bartlett in the Maserati by Turbo. 35, 26, Tony Noski and Speedway champ Gary Rush.
Position 36, car 53, Trevor Crowe, Ian Tulloch in a BMW. Position 37, car 3, Peter Jansen, Peter Fitzgerald in a Commodore. Position 38 is car 39, Steve Reed, Trevor Ashby in a Holden. Position 39, car 22, the brothers Lusty, Graham and John, the Commodore. And position 40, car 50, Phil Ward, Lyndon Reithmuller in a Mercedes.
From 41, the Golson father and son combo in the BMW. From 42, car 47, Annette Muvison and Mercedes Sturmitz. 43 is 90, John Faulkner and Drew Price in the Toyota. From 44, car 60, Mark Scaife and Grant Jarrett in a Nissan. From 45, 91, Johnny Smith and Johnny Faulkner.
Rounding out the field, position 46, car 94, Andrew Bagnall, Mark Jennings in a Toyota. Position 47, car 93, Bob Holden and Gary Wilmington in a Toyota. Position 48, car number 10, Giorgio Francia and Daniel Toyoffi in an Alfa. And in position 49, car 92 is David Ratcliffe and Mark Gibbs in a Corolla.
So that's the starting lineup for the 87 James Hardie 1000 from Mount Panorama, Bathurst.
Just minutes remaining now to the start of the great race, the James Hardie 1000. And Donald Kent joins the Army Band to sing God Bless Australia. Donald Kent, of course, will be featured in the bicentennial military tattoo to tour Australia next year.
Here in this God-given land of ours, Australia, to this proud possession our loyalty we give. It was built by the fathers who pioneered our heritage. Here in Australia, the land where we live. God bless Australia, our land Australia, home of the Anzac, the strong and the free. It's our homeland, our own land to cherish for eternity. God bless Australia, the land of the free. Here in Australia we cherish love and liberty. Our way of life, all for one for all. We're a peace-loving race, but should danger ever threaten us, let the whole world know we'll answer the call. God bless Australia, our land Australia, home of the Anzac, the strong and the free. It's our homeland, our own land to cherish for eternity. God bless Australia, the land of the free. God bless Australia, our land Australia, home of the Anzac, the strong and the free. It's our homeland, our own land to cherish for eternity. God bless Australia, the land of the free.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce the Grand Marshal for this year's race, the Chairman of James Hardie Industries, Mr. John Reid.
Thank you, Gary. Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
And the engines start, and the balloons head towards rather cloudy skies here today at Mount Panorama Bathurst as we prepare for the 87 James Hardie 1000.
Balloon is about to go up indeed, and the pace of this race in the opening laps is just going to be frightening, I think is the right word. From a spectator's point of view, the drivers might look cool, calm and collected as they head off on these opening laps, but believe me, the duel out there is for real.
A little drama, of course. We have two BMW M3s that have parked in the pit lane. They will come out after the field is dispatched. Two of the works cars, Roberto Ravalia, Roland Ratzenberger, and of course Winnie Vaught and Gruyard and Hager.
The indications are, Michael, that they did that deliberately. They went to the pit lane. There was nothing wrong with the cars. They want to start from the pit lane at the rear of the field.
Yes, in fact, the cars involved were car 43 Winnie Vogt and car 46 Marcus Osterach. And that's Johnny Cicotto in the 42 CBM M3, the highest qualifying BMW M3 and the only BMW to make Hardie's Heroes. And there's the two cars that I spoke of just a moment ago, 43 and 46. And they will be moved away after the entire field of cars has passed them heading up Mountain Straight.
What's going to be interesting to see here is Grice and Perkins in the two front-running Commodores. They've got a wall of turbocharged Ford Sierras in front of them. The Eggenberger Texaco cars, of course, along with the ANZ entry of Andy Rouse and Alan Moffat, plus Andrew Madecki in the Oxo Sierra. Will these Commodores be able to charge through the Sierras on the run to the first corner?
Larry Perkins, NZ, Fluid Connectors, Holden Commodore V8. And the thing to watch here, Wilco, will be whether or not the Texaco Sierras, and indeed all of the Sierras on the starting grid, can overcome fairly substantial lag problems and very high gearing and get away in front of the BMWs and the Holden Commodores. That was Steve Soper. 30 seconds to go before the start of the great race of 1987.
Keep an eye on Alan Grice, Larry Perkins and even Peter Brock to make a dramatic run for the front. Neville Crichton in the second of the Johnson Sierras. Flag will go up shortly for the start. 10 seconds away from the start of the James Hardie 1087 World Touring Car Championship. Racing in the 87 Classic and getting away smartly. On the inside was Andy Rouse. Here's Grice making a run. And Perkins down the inside and Grice looking for it into the first corner.
And Woodward missed the jump. Leadbits, rather.
Terrible start from him in car 7. There he is behind Peter McLeod in the mobile car number 10 as the field streaks up Mountain Straight. A dreadful start from Needswitz.
Beautiful shots as they head up Mountain Straight, bound for the right-hander at Bridgestone Corner.
Andy Rouse, the leader, as they press the top and head towards Bridgestone, the right-hander. Very quick, fast, sweeping right-hander. Madiki to second. There's Perkins and Brock. Johnny Cicotto, car number 42, the BMW M3.
Steve Soper got off to a much better start than his Eggenberger teammate Niedzwitz. Soper in third place. So one of the Texaco cars up there with the front runners, but he's got Alan Grice right on his hammer, followed by Larry Perkins, Peter Brock, and then Neville Crichton.
Commodores on the pace as they head to the top of Mount Panorama. Problems there for one of the Shell Sierras, had to back off, could have been Neville Crichton. They head down now towards the Castrol Sand Trap. Andy Rouse leads in the ANZ Banking Sierra, car number 9. As they sweep beneath, here's them closing up. Andrew Madeki up into second spot. Steve Soper is third. Alan Grice fourth. Larry Perkins is the next one through. Dropping down now through the S's towards the Dipper.
Grice, Perkins and Brock making one heck of a charge up the mountain, but the Sierras have been substantially quicker all week coming down Conrod Straight towards the new Caltex Chase.
Coming down to Toledo Turn for the first time, Andy Rouse of Great Britain in the ANZ Banking Sierra will lead them. Andrew Madeki, a brilliant start from the young Port Macquarie driver in the Oxo Supercube Sierra. And we'll see whether Soper can pull out of the draft now and pass Madeki as they come up to the top of the roller coaster and down for the first time towards Caltex Chase. Here's Soper making his move on the inside. The field goes through. There's an idea of the new look Caltex Chase area. They swing them back towards the Bridgestone Bridge. Andy Rouse still there, holding second. Andrew Madeki, and right behind him is Steve Soper as the rest of the field streams beneath the bridge, and they come down for the completion of the first lap. Here's Soper making a move. Going to put a number on Madeki. That moves him up to second. Rice sits back in fourth, and the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore as they complete the first lap of the 87 Classic.
What a performance by Andy Rouse to lead this field, but Soper is right on his tail now. He's got by Madeki. Madeki's under threat from Alan Grice as they go up the mountain, but you'll find that now the turbo cuts in and away goes Madeki.
You noticed earlier, Wilco, one of the Shell cars was in trouble getting to the top of the hill. It was Dick Johnson, but he is still circulating, but has dropped well back, probably just outside the top 10 at the moment. So Rouse with pressure on him from Steve Soper. The Eggenberger Texaco Ford Sierra. Sierras 1, 2 and 3 with Andrew Madeki from Port Macquarie in third, and then Alan Grice and Alan Moffat watching his teammate Andy Rouse in the ANZ Ford Sierra. He'll join him later this afternoon.
They come out of BP Cutting. They head to the top of the mountain towards West End Bend. Second time around in the James Hardie Classic. Andy Rouse getting closer all the time is Steve Soper. Down towards Reed Park. The cars just lurch across the road. Left-hander at the Castrol Sand Trap comes up. Watch them work the little Sierras through here. Rouse, ice cool.
Using for the first time this weekend since campaigning a Ford Sierra throughout the 87 World Touring Car Championship, Dunlop radial tyres. And very happy and impressed with the way that the car's performing, and now all of the cars in the field starting to work up to a full operating temperature, although they're carrying 120 litres of fuel. That's the shot of the field as they stream across the top of Mount Panorama with Steve Soper in hot pursuit of Andy Rouse.
You can see what a tortuous piece of terrain it really is coming off the top of Mount Panorama now. The enormous strain it places on the cars, and then they come out of Toledo Turn and head down Conrod Straight here at enormous speeds, 270 plus kilometres per hour, back to Caltex Chase once more. This flying corner here, you've got to be brave to take it flat out. But if you're going to ward off competition like Steve Soper, you've got to be brave.
Here's our track cam, 7 Sport exclusive as the cars go over the top of our camera.
It's not only spectacular, the cameraman gets a hell of a headache.
In for the completion of the second lap, Steve Soper of Great Britain getting ready for an inside pass. They come along pit straight, sits right on the tail of Andy Rouse. We're keeping an eye also on Peter Brock. Engaged in a great scrap there with Larry Perkins.
Dick Johnson's recovered pretty well. He's up and running 7th and the car going smoothly again. I don't know what that first lap problem was.
Here's the charge of the Light Brigade to the top of Mountain Straight. Andy Rouse, followed, of course, by Steve Soper. Andrew Madeki is in third. Alan Grice is fourth. Then a bit of a scrap developing as we take the Bob Jane T-Mart's race cam as they head into the right-hander and work their way up Motorcraft Hill.
And Gricey being attacked at the moment by Larry Perkins and Peter Brock in the mobile entry. This car, remember, completely rebuilt after an accident at McPhillamy Park when Wyn Percy was driving on Friday. And those marvellous lads at the TAFE College here at Bathurst again to the fore in getting cars back on the circuit for Sunday's great race.
They've had plenty of work to do in this past week of qualifying at Mount Panorama.
Back to the race leaders, Andy Rouse and Steve Soper, both of England, 1-2. The ANZ Banking Sierra.
Rouse cannot shake Soper off his tail, try as he might. They've dropped Madecki off just a fraction, and I see Madecki now opened up a little bit of a break on Alan Grice, who was hounding him through the first 2 laps. Behind them, of course, Larry Perkins, Peter Brock, then Dick Johnson.
Down towards Forest Elbow, Toledo Tools turn. You don't have to be much closer than that to set up for a passing move. Soper sits on the tail of the Rouse Sierra. Andrew Madecki, great job, still running in third in the Oxo Supercube. Then Alan Grice in 4th place. This is where the cars run down to the right-hand kink at Caltex. Just watch them move around on the racetrack with the bumps.
I noticed that time down Conrod Straight that car 60, the Nissan Gazelle Peter Jackson entry of Mark Scapes is missing. I think it's parked off to the side of the road up there.
They sweep through, down beneath the Bridgestone Bridge again to the left-hander coming up. And here comes the move from Steve Soper as he puts one on Andy Rouse and will take the lead. Rouse tucks in behind him. So with 3 completed, Steve Soper of Great Britain in the Texaco Ford Sierra takes over the lead in the James Hardie 1000. Rouse in 2nd and 3rd place held by Andrew Madecki. Let's have a look on our Toyota replay of an incident that occurred up here. Larry Perkins. Pop!
And I think that's the number 18 Ford Sierra, which was driven by Neville Crichton off the start. Yes, there's Dick Johnson through on the inside, so Larry Perkins in a lot of strife at the cutting and taking out Neville Crichton as well in car number 18, the Shell Sierra.
That's the first major casualty, and there are 2 of the expected front runners in this race. There you can see the cars parked up there on the inside and the outside. Keeping in mind, the officials, if they decide that the racetrack is blocked in that area, they will bring out the pace car with the yellow flags and remove both cars, and the field will continue behind the pace car. At the moment, they would be determining where the cars are positioned. Meantime, though, Steve Soper, the Texaco Eggenberger Ford Sierra Cosworth, leads from Andy Rouse.
Well, that is a real shame for Larry Perkins, who must have stood a great show at the end of 6.5 hours of racing to be certainly up amongst the leaders. Really been the pace setter. There's Greg Hansford, who'll be, to say the least, despondent about what he's just seen on television. It certainly hasn't been Greg's year. And there is Dick Johnson in trouble in car number 17.
Doesn't appear to be any damage. It looks like he's just rolled off the circuit with some mechanical problem. So both the Shell Ultra Sierras are out of business. And we've yet to complete 4 laps. Another car parked off there on the inside. I think that might have been the 60 car, Mark Scaife.
Coming down to the Caltex chase, the car just in front of Alan Grice is, of course, Andrew Madecki in the Oxo Supercube Ford Sierra. They've spaced themselves rather well. Soper. There's Andy Rouse running in 2nd. Young Andrew Madecki, who'll be sharing with Don Smith, and Grice in 4th.
Back onto the main straight to complete 4 laps. Soper continued to lead from Rouse, then Madecki, but the big charger in the field is Klaus Niedwitz, Neil Crompton.
Yes, indeed. He fell as far back as 14th, according to my lap chart, and has now come up to 7th place after that dreadful start. I mean, he really did bog the car down. Denny Holmes, 67 World Formula 1 champion.
Look says it all, doesn't it?
Totally disgusted with what he's seen at the top of the hill. A 2-minute 23.07 that time through for Steve Soper. So they are flying when one considers the amount of weight they're carrying with a full load of fuel, 120 litres. And there's the Bob Jane T-Mart's race cam from Alan Grice's car in 4th position and closing on Andrew Medicki in the Texaco Ford Sierra. Peter McLeod, car 10.
Under threat from car 40 there. It's the Emmanuel Hero BMW. Car 10, the second of the Brock Mobile Commodore entries, sweeping through. Colin Bond there as well in the turbocharged Alpha. Oh, gee, they're going door handle to door handle up the mountain, but the BMW is one out on the 10 car. Peter McLeod at the wheel of the second Brock entry.
Peter Brock, 8 times winner of Australia's Great Race. Still considers his Commodore will be around at the end of the afternoon. He's going to set his own pace, let the Sierras play out in front, see if they develop transmission problems. And we have the second Texaco car coming up behind Brock.
Is Klaus Niedzwitz, the man who blew the start quite badly. He was on pole position. His partner, of course, Klaus Ludwig, having set pole time in Hardie's Heroes yesterday. Niedzwitz probably won't be too popular with Ludwig at the moment, but with the power that they've obviously got, the Sierras have got the ability to climb back through the field, and that's just what Niedzwitz is doing now. That's just what Niedzwitz needs to do.
A little bimmer with Johnny Cicotto, quite surprising at this stage of the race. Niedzwitz. Go to the 7. Closing on Brock. And Cicotto. And the first of the JPS BMWs. Heading up Mountain Straight. Cars that have really dominated World Touring Car Championship this year.
Isn't that a sensational shot? And the gap between these two cars at the moment is 1.6 seconds and ever closing. Cicotto behind in the CBM BMW M3. And he's got pressure on him at the moment from Jim Richards in the JPS BMW.
Niedzwitz, of course, was scheduled to compete in the James Hardie 1000 last year, but in the weeks leading up to the race was involved in an accident in which he suffered a broken leg. So he had to wait till 87 to make his first run here at Mount Panorama, and he's doing it exceedingly well after missing the jump.
That is in the background there, Dickie Johnson on the long walk back to the pits. There's Brock going through. Niedzwitz is the next one.
This is what the crowd on the hill have come to see. Holden versus Ford. Brock versus anybody. Action aplenty here at Mount Panorama. We've seen Larry Perkins and Neville Crichton already on the second lap only of the race in the cutting, coming together and putting each other out of business. And here's another incident, the number 1 car, the Maserati, with Armin Hana at the wheel at Caltex Chase, off the circuit, backwards and into the dirt. No major damage, it would seem, except that it's cost him a lot of time and many, many places in the field.
That Toyota replay of Armin Hana hitting the Sandtrap at Caltex Chase. Number 7, Niedzwitz, working his way past Peter Brock. So it's looking like a Sierra benefit at the moment in the early laps. That's what we all expected. BMW 46 that started from the pit lane, of course, that we mentioned earlier. Now up to position 24 after the pit lane start, and their 43 car now to 29.
Brock then with a time of just over 25, 2:25, which he'd be pretty comfortable with. In 6th place, the order Soper from Rouse, Medicki, Grice, then Niedzwitz, and then Peter Brock.
Number
the Toyotas. He passed there by Nisbets as he heads through Bridgestone and now on his way up Motorcraft Hill. Headlights ablaze. Up to the BP cutting where the NZ Fluid Connectors Commodore of Larry Perkins and the 18 Shell Ultra High Cosworth have parked. Coming up through West End Bend, race lead still held by Steve Soper. Second place is Andy Rouse, carrying our Toledo Tools race cam as he goes over the top, down through the S's. And he's not that far behind the race leader at this stage, Steve Soper. Doing it very comfortably, a very talented driver. A man who really engineered the Ford Sierras, a racing Group A vehicle.
And the four-time British touring car champion. And these things fly. The most accurate speed readout we could get off the radar gun at the bottom of the straight was 275 kilometres an hour. And according to Andy's gearing charts, they're going quicker than that. And he is closing rapidly onto the back of Steve Soper's Texaco entry. And I'd say that he's got the measure of him at the moment. I think he's quite comfortable in that position.
Again, he's going for a sprint.
He's just having a look. And you can see that he's not doing it tough.
Comes out beneath the Hardie Bridge. This is the ANZ Banking Sierra, supported by DDB Needham. And of course Continental, the car that we expect to see remain in Australia for Alan Moffat to campaign next year.
Well, Soper is worried because he's now starting to drive defensively. Notice that time when he went through Hell Corner, he moved a car and a half, maybe 2 car widths off the conventional and quick racing line, and he's trying to cover all the time because here comes Andy Rouse. Shot from Toledo Tools 7 race cam as they go to the right-hander at Bridgestone. A corner that is very easy to make mistakes on. A few guys have been caught out this week. You can be sucked into it too quickly. And Alan Grice really closing quite substantially in fourth. I thought that he might struggle to keep touch with these guys. But none of the Ford runners prepared to abuse axles or differentials, which have given them some problems throughout the World Touring Car Championship whilst they've got a full load of fuel.
And aren't they fast over this part of the racetrack? Through Reed Park, down to the Castrol Sand Trap.
Race leader's about to lap a car.
Rouse makes the move down the outside. That's allowed Soper to get away from him just a little.
It hasn't been a pleasant World Touring Car Championship for Rouse, with only the 5th placing coming out of the 3rd round at Dijon in France and 8th at the Nürburgring in Germany. And other than that, it's basically been did not finish results. Blew an engine the 1st round at Monza in Italy. Was running very, very well at Jarama in Spain and crashed into Klaus Ludwig and sidelined the car, although they did finish 14th. Then a 5th and an 8th round, 3 and 4.
Here he comes.
Percy drove the car at Spa and lost a wheel, and he is honking at the moment as they come down towards the right-hand kink, the gentle kink of about 17 degrees into the Caltex chase. Soper having an extra bite at the brakes, just runs a fraction wide.
He wants to be on the inside here, but Steve is, as you said, driving defensively, and now the move down the outside. He's made up that gap he lost over the top of the mountain and now sits on the bumper of the Texaco Ford Sierra. And here's the Rouse making his move down the outside. Can he do it? Andy Madecki sits back in 3rd spot. Grice just behind him.
They've dropped back to 2:24.45, which is going to allow, and Soper being passed by Rouse now as they head up towards the top of Mountain Straight. And I don't think Soper's in very good shape at the moment for some strange reason.
Trying to stay with Rouse, but unable to do so. Rouse really made a lightning move there as they came out of Hell Corner. So Rouse has got the lead again, and Soper all that hard work to do once more. Andrew Madecki driving a clever race, just content at this moment to keep pace with the 2 leaders and sit in behind them. He hasn't attempted to move up and challenge. Whether or not he's got that ability under the bonnet remains to be seen. but he's got to keep his eyes on the rearview mirror because Grice is looming large.
Both of these drivers will be mindful of their last World Touring Car Championship drive at Silverstone only a few weeks back, when they were both front runners and they were both sidelined with driveline problems, and that is the key area, the Achilles heel, if you like, that might let these cars down, and that's certainly what the BMW and Commodore runners are banking on for later this afternoon.
Rouse and Steve Soper continue their magic battle at the top of Mount Panorama. And Andrew Madecki. Rice is one spot back behind them.
John Smith being passed there in the Toyota Team Corolla, about to be assaulted by Alan Grice as they rush beneath GIO and down towards the Caltex chase. A little bit of air under the car as they come over the hump, but nothing like we used to have on the old Conrod Straight. And by and large, the majority of the drivers very satisfied with the changes in the track.
Andy Rouse over our track cam. Heads down to beneath the Bridgestone Bridge. Headlights ablaze. There's Alan Grice staying in touch with them as they come down to the left-hander. That will bring them back along pit straight here at Mount Panorama. So after setting the pace in the early days of practice here, Andy Rouse is looking good. Let's check the placings at the moment on the Castrol scoreboard. Steve Soper trailing the Moffat Rouse car. Then Andrew Madecki in third place. Alan Grice runs in fourth. Then, of course, Klaus Niedzwitz in fifth spot. Sixth held by Peter Brock. Seventh by Johnny Cicotto. Eighth from Jim Richards. Ninth, Glenn Seaton and John Bowen sitting right behind him. Teammate George Fury and Terry Shield. Andy Rouse comes across the top of Mount Panorama, and of course so many of these cars will be seen in New Zealand for the Nissan Mobile World Championship round on the streets of Wellington.
Won't that set the streets of Wellington alight?
Certainly will. That's on the 26th of October on the holiday Monday. The strong contingent of Australians going over. It's a bruising street circuit. I don't know how the Sierras will find the pace over there, Neil. Poor old Andy Rouse found it a bit hot last time he was there.
I was about to mention that he ran one of the older XR4 TI single cam 2.3 litre engined Sierras and ended up losing a wheel down the pit straight. I'm sure he's looking forward to going back there with a completely competitive weapon.
Sierras 1, 2, 3 at this stage of the race. Rouse, Soper, Madecki, the first of the Commodores. Alan Grice is in fourth place as they again come down Conrod Straight towards Caltex Chase.
The Maserati bi-turbo has been for a check with the doctor in the pit area and back out onto the racetrack again. It's getting awfully close. There's the bi-turbo in the pits with Armin Hanna. We'll be bringing you Motorcraft pit reports as Steve Soper makes a move down here on the inside of Andy Rouse and takes the lead back. Andrew Madecki still sitting there for a comfortable third spot. They sweep through the pit corner, heading up Mountain Straight. Just at that moment, Steve Soper takes back the lead in the James Hardie 1000, but not for long because Andy Rouse comes up to run side by side with him. Madecki sits just back behind them. They're having a swapsy game at the front. 10 laps now completed in the great race for 87. And Neil, they are having a real race.
Yes, this really is quite interesting. I'm just curiously watching the stopwatch at the moment. They're circulating in either low 24s or sometimes high 23s. And Andrew Madecki's turned out to be the charger in the field. When you consider the 2:16 that Klaus Ludwig did in Hardie's Heroes yesterday. We're talking about chalk and cheese performance. 1,000-kilometre race though, and whilst everybody was talking about this race being a full-on sprint, I'm just wondering whether or not these guys have decided the only way they're going to get to the checkered flag is by coming back to this pace, and that's why the Commodores are much closer than we thought.
And hasn't Andrew Madecki been able to haul them in as well? Sits right behind Rouse this time. Grice have dropped off just a little. There he is coming into view as they come down to the left-hander at Forest Elbow.
Bad news for the Kiwi fans is that Graham Crosby in his DFC Commodore car 21 is in the pits, and it looks like an extended stay.
They go beneath the GIO bridge down Conrod Straight. Stevie Soper in the Texaco Star. To Caltex Chase. Doing it very comfortably. Rouse has fallen back into the hands of Andrew Madecki at this stage. And Grice still runs in fourth.
Well, the top four have got a pretty good break over the rest of the field at the moment. Peter Brock in the 05 Commodore, of course, is the next man up. Dick Johnson is out, as you know. We saw him pull off on the inside of the circuit at the top of Mount Panorama. Neville Crichton is out in the second of the Queensland Shell Ultra entries, car 18. You saw the coming together there with Larry Perkins in car number 11 on only the second lap.
Noticed on the way up Mountain Straight that time, Colin Bond with the Alpha up on the, with the bonnet up, I should say, on the Alpha 75 Turbo.
There it is, just on the right, disappearing from view now. Maybe more turbo problems for the Alpha 75 car.
Madecki doing a good job, Neil.
He's doing a great job, isn't he? This fella's had plenty of international experience and is best known to us in days gone by for being one of the hardest charging open-wheeler drivers you could ever see. But he had a couple of cracks at World Endurance Championship racing in Porsche 956s, and as I recall, picked up a 4th and a 6th in rounds at Sandown and also Malaysia. So the guy knows what he's doing.
The Ward Reithmuller Mercedes about to get the short back and sides.
Phil Ward at the wheel, lost a wheel yesterday.
Balked momentarily, Andrew Madecki there. Madecki's passed now. And still on the tail of Andy Rouse.
Yes, the little Sefco Benz is quick, but not that quick. 3.99 seconds back to Alan Grice in 4th place. That's the gap from Andrew Madecki. And this is the view from Toledo Tools race cam as we watch Andy Rouse hard at work in the ANZ Sierra, chasing Steve Soper as they seesaw for the lead in the great race of 87. Car number 46 calls to the pits, another of the BMWs. That's the Marcus Osterreich entry.
Now that's one of the cars that started from the pit lane at the rear of the field, and in 6 laps it moved up from the end of the field to 24th position.
There's Colin Bond's stranded Caltex Alpha 75 on the way up the straight, Mountain Straight.
He's in for a bit of bad luck there if somebody wants to use that back entry into the garage area too. Here's car 46 in the pits, working frantically under the front there.
Peter Floor, the head of BMW Motorsport, at the front of the car.
The start-finish line again, and Madecki is close. Look at him right now on the leading pair. Coming up on one of the smaller capacity cars. Looked like the Alpha 33, the one that was brought out specially from Italy for the race.
Word in from Colin Bond, lost gears, not a turbo problem, has just lost gears in the Alpha 75. It's going nowhere for the time being.
That makes an unwelcome change, doesn't it?
Rouse again closing up on the tail of Steve Soper. Madecki comes in for the ride. Sierra's 1, 2, 3 at the top of the field. To BP Cutting.
This really is turning into a sensational scrap. 3 Ford Sierras. Steve Soper, the leader. Andy Rouse in 2nd place, Andrew Madecki in 3rd. So 2 Englishmen followed by an Australian.
The sensational thing is, of course, that Rouse is, I guess, basically seen as the poor privateer compared to Rudy Eggenberger's Texaco team. He wants to beat the Eggenberger cars. Say nothing of what Andrew Madecki would like to do to the two of them. Very strong factory support in Europe.
Well, I know one man that'll be very happy is the car owner, Don Smith, who was unfortunate enough to roll the car. Oh, and Andy gets a little out of shape coming into Forest Elbow. He unfortunately rolled the car in the prelude to this race, the Castrol 500, a couple of weeks back at Sandown. They were very hopeful of putting in a strong showing, and they're really delivering today. Notice how much all of these cars walk around down the straight.
Well, it's a pretty stiff breeze too, blowing straight across the track.
There's a really strong westerly.
In fact, I think weather's going to be a very grave concern for team managers and drivers before the day is over. The breeze is forecast to move from the west, a fairly strong but mild breeze at the moment, with heavy overcast. Around to the southwest, expected to get heavier, expected to get colder, and possible rain.
Incidentally, the Marcus Osterreich BMW has rejoined the race.
I guess we should point out too that if those conditions do prevail as the day progresses, that's good turbo weather.
Perfect.
Turbos do not want the heat. They are inclined to be a little fragile under the best of circumstances.
One of the other points of interest, I think, in this battle, Wilco, is the tyre battle, because the lead driver here, Steve Soper, is using Pirelli radial tyres, whereas Andy Rouse is using Dunlop radial tyres. And I would believe that Andrew Madecki is also on Dunlop at the moment.
We're on lap 13 in the James Hardie 1000 now for 1987. Steve Soper in front, the first of the Eggenberger Texaco Sierras, then Andy Rouse in the ANZ Sierra entry, co-driven of course in this race by Alan Moffat. Car 35, Andrew Madecki, the Oxo Sierra, holding out third spot. Alan Grice next in the Bob Jane T-March Commodore in fourth. Fifth place is held by car number 7, and that, I might point out, is Klaus Niedzwitz. The man who started from pole position got shuffled back to 14th, is now up to 7th spot on the racetrack, just ahead of Peter Brock in the 05 Commodore. Brocky is in 6th place after 12 laps.
Incidentally, Gary, Colin Bond has got the Alpha 75 mobile again, and there he is in the pits. They've had gearbox selection problems throughout the week, and they blew a number of turbos, and the front suspension collapsed as well. Bondi now out of the car. That's his co-driver, Lucio Cesario.
Bondi is there, sunglasses on, and Peter McKay.
Colin Bond, very bad luck into the pits at this stage of the race. What's the problem?
It's got a flat battery. That's the only problem at present. The alternator's not charging, and the computer system just stops the car. And I looked at it, and the volts were way down. I just let it stay for a while. Then it finally started, and I just kept on cutting out, so I kept turning the thing on and off. I just had enough power in the battery to get back. I think that if they change the alternator and the battery, everything's going to be fine again.
I'm just looking at the tyre that's come off the front right of the Caltex Alpha, and it's very badly chopped up. What's the problem there?
It had a wobble.
No doubt about it. The Amadeus of the Alpha team, Colin Bond. There's Jimmy Richards. And this has been a fascinating little scrap back in the pack.
In 7th place on the track, Jim Richards, and just behind him in car 42, the BMW, Johnny Cicotto, and immediately behind them, the 2 Nissan Skylines of Glenn Seaton and George Fury.
That's quite interesting, because for the first 10 laps or so, it was Cicotto setting the pace as far as the BMW mark was concerned. And now Jim Richards is flying the flag very high for our local product, built and developed in Sydney by Frank Gardner, the reigning Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Champion. And it looks like they're about to come under attack from Glenn Seaton, who's had a fraught week. George Fury not too far behind. His car demolished on Wednesday when Terry Shield was most unfortunate to have some problems at the top of the hill and to sideswipe one of the concrete walls. And poor old Glenn, who now dodges out from behind Cicotto, didn't seem to be able to keep the turbo in his car for 2 days, but now it's functioning quite nicely. And Fred said to me this morning, Fred Gibson, their team manager, that they were very confident that they could run a good, consistent race pace and be there at the end of the day.
One of the works BMWs in the pit area. The Ostrike Ratzenberger car, Schnitzer BMW M3.
Car 40 was in 13th place on the track. Running quite solidly at the time, but
Richard Hayes down there. What's happening, Rich?
The problem with the car at the moment is, Michael, that they've brought the car in with a misfire. Now, it's not been a good day for the Works BMW team so far. The 46 car came in earlier on, which is the car that was repaired after it was written off by the TAFE guys. The TAFE guys repaired it. It came in there with bodywork, rubbing on the wheels. The wheel arches had to be hammered out, which was a problem they had before the start of the race as well. This car's come in. It's got some damage on it as well, but it's also come in with a misfire. That's the problem here at the moment. You might have wondered why the little Nissan Gazelle stopped earlier on. Apparently it was overheating. Now, perhaps Neil Crompton could explain to me why you should stop a car that was overheating and not bring it straight back to the pits.
I don't know, I've never stopped.
He drives them until they stop.
Incidentally, that car was being driven by Emanuele Pirro, and look now as Glenn Seaton really charges through. Our BP race cam showing some graphic shots. That's Phil Ward in the Sefco Benz on the inside, and Seaton having a real battle on his hands at the moment with Jim Richards. He must have been crying. There's some water on the lens of our race cam.
It's dry. That's our BP race cam that will ride with Glenn Seaton throughout the day in the number 15 car. Chicotto in the middle of a Nissan sandwich at the moment. See if George Fury can make a move on the Venezuelan as they head up Mountain Straight this time. 12 months ago, of course, the Nissans would have been here trying to set the pace. But I think Neil has already remarked that Freddie Gibson is running to a different pace here today. He's running to the pace just to finish. 15, Glenn Seaton now moves to 8th, George Fury to 9th, you've just seen that happen, as Johnny Chicotto now goes back to 10th. And how appropriate, coming up to BP cutting. We'll see what sort of pressure Glenn Seaton could put on Jimmy Richards. The little M3 is amazingly fast over the top of the mountain.
Isn't it incredible how performance changes so quickly in this game? Last year it was Gary Scott who was the pace there in Hardie's Heroes. He did a time of 2:17. This year on a new track with 40 extra metres, we have a Texaco Ford Sierra that's done a 2:16. And it was supposed to add 4.5 seconds to lap times. Well, Glenn Seaton is a man very hard at work at the moment, uses every centimetre of the available road at the top. This is Skyline. Driver has no idea of what's to come in the right-hander as he crests the brow. Down through the dipper, and look at the nimble M3 through there. Jim Richards, a master at work, getting the car through there very quickly. Only about 960 kilograms. 2.3 litre fuel-injected 4-cylinder engine being chased by a turbocharged Nissan. And handling and brakes are the BMW's forte.
Now on lap number 16, the Maserati by Turbo is about to get the bypass here from Jimmy Richards and Glenn Seaton. This is where Seaton closes on Jimmy Richards down to Caltex Chase, the right-hand king. Now cross to the left-hander. He can get himself well sorted here.
Jim's having to drive offline a little to try and round up Armin, the 1985 James Hardie winner, who then drove with Tom Walkinshaw, and now Richards swaps to the inside. Armin's a professional. He knows he doesn't want to hold up a good race. He's got a perfect score at Bathurst, although I think that'll fall away this weekend. He won the Group A class in 1984 at its instigation in the Mobile Rover. Picked up a victory the following year in the Jaguar. And look at George. Fury in car number 30 trying to find a way through on the inside of his teammate. So rapidly becoming a four-way battle with Richards at the head of the pack, then Seaton, then Fury, who's making a charge, and Chicotto behind them.
Seaton again, right behind the Australian champ Jimmy Richards. The two of them fought out a magnificent battle for the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car title this year. So the BP Teamsters, Glenn Seaton and George Fury. This is quite a freight train as they head to the top of BP cutting.
Through the wreckage there of the Perkins and Neville Crichton cars.
I reckon that Glenn would be looking for some sweet revenge after ditching the Touring Car Championship. He tried so hard The two manufacturers, BMW and Nissan, ended up joint winners of the Manufacturers' Championship in Australian touring car racing.
By the way, the 40 BMW is still in the pits. They're still working on it. There are so many people, they're getting in each other's road. The stewards are there and they're arguing with them as well. I don't think they're ever going to get back out on the track, not at this rate.
The interesting thing is that, of course, the BMW teams from Europe came here with 6 cars. And, of course, Frank Gardner came to Mount Panorama with 2. And Jimmy Richards at the moment is leading the BMW contingent, make no doubt about that.
Well, I noticed that Greg Pee-wee Siddle's at the front of that car down there, looking a little solemn, so perhaps Richard might be able to get down there and see what's going on. And I hate to argue with our computer, but that is the Emanuele Pirro BMW.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and they've down tools there as well, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere in a hurry. Back to the battle. Look at this.
Thinking about trying to get down here on the inside, but Jim covers these tracks beautifully.
Glenn goes back to second for the chase. Needs every bit of power he can squirt out of the Nissan to third. To fourth briefly. Oh, late braking, look at this, back to second, he's got it all swinging in the breeze. Richards closes the gap, there's nothing between them, a little bit of oversteer from the Nissan, and he gets right into the draft of the BMW, acknowledges his pit board, and he can just sense that he's got the pace at the moment to really give Jim some problems, and gets all sideways, coming through on the inside. Big fistfuls of opposite lock, and that'll probably allow George Fury to get just a little closer.
Shades of the final round of the Australian Touring Car Championship at Oran Park, the battle between this pair. That 40 BMW is up and running again, by the way.
Well, poor old Jim is giving Glenn Seaton cardiac arrest. Georgie Fury chiming in. George also has to contend with Johnny Cicotto, who sits just back behind him. Jim is doing a giant killing job here in the M3. The 44 JPS car heading up to BP cutting again.
George Fury has traditionally been one of the unluckiest drivers at Mount Panorama. A guy with enormous talent, Australian Rally champion, winner of the Southern Cross Rally here, finished 4th in the New Zealand round of the World Rally Championship back in about 1981, I think it was. Twice the runner-up in the Australian Touring Car Championship, but when he's come to Bathurst, apart from that brilliant lap in Hardie's Heroes back in 1984, luck has deserted him.
Look at him stream across the top nose to tail. 4 outstanding drivers. Richards, Seaton, Fury, and Cicotto, of course, no introduction, former world motorcycle champion. Both 500 and 750cc categories, and I think 350s as well.
Yes, you're right, Wilco. Sorry, I was just looking at my notes as always.
Well, I was looking at you for confirmation. You're the mine of information around here.
Don't know about that. 75, I think it was World 350 champion. He was the runner-up once in the 500 class, and he also picked up the World 750 as well. Did a stint in Formula One with Tolman before he severely broke his legs.
Oh, gee, did you see? Picked that wheel up.
Just picked it up straight over the top of the curb. That happened to one of the Lusty boys yesterday.
Is that the new model Nissan bicycle?
Freewheeling, two-wheeling. Come down to the end of Conrod Straight. This fascinating dice between Glenn Seaton and Jim Richards continues.
The battle for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th places.
Sweep out on the approach to Mountain Straight again. We'll see whether or not Seaton, if he can make a run at Richards. Over the crest there. Here he comes, down the inside. Moment of truth for Jimmy Richards. Look at Fury. Fury going to try and see if he can sneak down there as well. Here comes the farmer. They work their way up Motorcraft Hill. Jimmy Richards will have the line for the next turn, but George takes it in deep. Will Richards give way? George is very wide as they come out of the turn. Power on. Turbo boost. Door handle to door handle. And the Nissans get through on the inside of the JPS BMW. Sensational stuff through West End Bend.
where are all those people who said the BMW had no torque? The thing was sensational coming up the mountain, right through to the cutting and even to the top. Gave away literally nothing to George, and it was only the better line that in the end got him through.
Seaton goes through, Fury. But of course, Jimmy Richards will keep the pressure on them on the way to Forest Elbow.
Well, you watch Jim give George plenty to think about by the time he gets down to the elbow, and the lusty Commodore has gone in the second time in 2 days, and they've written the front off the car at Forest Elbow.
Well, they've parked it very neatly against the wall. At least it's out of harm's way. Right, gee, they've done some damage, and that, of course, is terminal. We won't be seeing them again today. And whilst we watch this battle, the other news is, of course, that positions unchanged up front. We're now on lap 20.
It's all happening in the James Hardie for 1987. Here comes Seaton down on the inside of the Team Toyota. George keeps the pressure on, sits right in behind young Glenn. They go beneath the Bridgestone Bridge. Heading down to the left-hander.
Up front, Soper continues to lead from Rouse, Madecki and Grice, but I tell you what, Klaus Niedzwitz is the man who's now moving up again. He's got 5th spot. In fact, he's got past Alan Grice. So Niedzwitz is up to 4th after dropping back to 14th when he missed the start.
And of course, Andrew Madecki on the other side of the course has just gone through on the inside to take 2nd spot away from Andy Rouse.
Did you notice on race cam then Dick Johnson standing by the side of the track? So he's content to stay up in the hill and do a bit of spectating. He doesn't want to face the masses at the bottom. He'll be a very bitterly disappointed man.
Through Nissan Skyline. So Klaus Niedzwitz has Gricey behind him. Gricey setting a solid pace, hanging in there. And the Sierras at this stage dominating the 1987 James Hardie 1000 from Bathurst. The exit from Toledo Tools turn. This will give you an opportunity to be able to see Niedzwitz the way those little Sierras just accelerate. There he goes from the GIO bridge. Grice running as hard as he can. Down to the right-hander. That illustrates rather graphically the straight line speed of the little Ford Sierra. Grice through there. He's up there with the Commodore. One fellow who was not out there with the Commodore is Larry Perkins. Started so well, he has returned to the pits.
He has indeed, Mike, and before we talk to Larry, let me just clear up one thing. Klaus Niedzwitz intended to start slowly with that car because they were worried about the clutch. They have to slip the clutch in the areas because they run such a tall first gear, and he intended to do that start. It wasn't a poor start, it was intentional. Now, Larry, what happened?
I was driving along quite merrily, and Neville Crichton in Nicky Johnson's car appeared to have enormous brain fade and hit me in the rear quarter at a hell of a velocity and put me into the fence, and he went with me.
But the man who's had the most consistent Commodore all season, you must be very disappointed.
Well, exceptionally disappointed. I mean, I've been to Bathurst, I think it's my 10th time, and managed to keep out of all the hassles and never bent a panel, and to get taken out in someone else's, I think just sheer stupidity is, well, it's so disappointing.
A great disappointment there then with one of the fastest Commodores in the race. One of the best and the most consistent of the cars already out.
Thank you, Richard.
Well, this is a very interesting battle because we have Andrew Madecki closing on the back of our race leader at the moment, Steve Soper, coming up onto the back of the Giddings Stewart Oxo Sierra. Don't be confused, he's about to be 1 lap down, and Madecki is a car and a half length behind, and Colin Bond, the meat in the sandwich in the Caltex Alpha. And we have one heck of a race on for the lead at the moment in the 1987 Great Race.
There's Madecki splitting them as they come down Conrod Straight. He was all over the back of Steve Soper as they crested the top of the mountain last time. That little hold-up at Forest Elbow has cost him dearly, though, in time.
Andy Rouse has dropped back into 3rd. I'll just get the split for you next time through.
Soper, Madecki, 1-2, Rouse in third, then Needsvits in the first of the Eggenberger Texaco cars. That's the man we're watching.
Handy Andy getting right here on the bumper of Steve Soper.
7 seconds, 7.2
Look
seconds.
at this. Madecki goes through on Steve Soper. Soper comes back at him on the outside as they work their way up Mountain Straight. And the Aussie from Port Macquarie is now in front.
Well, Andrew looked as though he did that with the greatest of ease. Incredible. 7.23 seconds back to Andy Rouse is what I was trying to stammer out before. I just cannot believe the pace of Andrew Madecki's car coming up the hill.
Through West End Bend. He's looking good out there, Neil.
Yes, I'm sitting here scratching my head trying to
figure out how he did it.
Yeah, just and figure the theory. I wonder whether Steve's content with his pace. He seems to have been happy to play a bit of cat and mouse. I've got the stopwatch going at the moment. We'll see what sort of lap times they're churning out and whether, in fact, Steve has backed off slightly or Andrew is on the charge. They'll be burning off a fairly large amount of their 120-litre fuel load with about 52 minutes down in the race. Probably get about an hour and a half endurance out of a tank load. They're coming up now onto the back of the Murray Carter Steve Masterton Netcom Nissan Skyline.
He's doing this beautifully down on the inside. Murray Carter moves to the outside.
Gary Scott's going to be the next man attacked in the Dulux Auto colour entry. Wayne Wilkinson driving the Can-Am Enterprises VL Commodore.
To the end of Conrod Straight. Andrew Madecki. And is he looking good out there in the Oxo Super Cute Ford Sierra. Steve Soper still in second spot. They've got away now from Andy Rouse in the ANZ Sierra.
Rouse is now 10 seconds behind.
One guy who we caught early on our Toyota replay. This is the lusty Commodore getting out of shape and her runch. Up she goes. Down it comes. It has not been the week for the Lusties. The car had a monumental lose here yesterday on the approach to the Caltex sand trap. The TAFE boys have worked throughout the night to have it back on the track this morning, and it has gone out in most spectacular circumstances. Showing his best out in front. Car number 35. Oh, and using a wide line through there. Andrew Madecki, let's update you the positions on the Castrol scoreboard. Madecki is the race leader in his Oxo Sierra. Second, Steve Soper in the Texaco Ford. Third is Andy Rouse in the ANZ Sierra. Fourth is Klaus Needsvits. Fifth is Alan Grice in car number 2.
Lap 23 of 161, the World Touring Car Championship round from Mount Panorama, Bathurst. Johnny Cicotto in the number 42 CBM M3, just passing Jimmy Richards in 44. Puts Richards back to 10th spot. Cicotto now to 9th, and his farmer George. And Glenn Seaton dicing just ahead of them. George now goes through. It's been a fantastic scrap for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. Just as up front, the scrap between Andrew Madecki and Steve Soper continues, with Soper taking the lead back in the last half lap. They're still running very, very tight indeed.
While all that's going on, I note with interest that Alan Grice's pit crew are readying themselves for what looks to be a stop. Makes me think that Gricey went out on very soft rubber to impress early on. Oh, George using every little skerrick of road on that occasion. And the BMW game plan unfolding very neatly at the moment. The M3s had exceptional endurance and are tipped to do one less pit stop. The difficult thing with the Nissan Skylines is keeping them planted firmly on the ground, as you can notice, without the use of aerodynamic aids such as the BMW M3 has, or even the Commodore. These cars really jump around. Oh, through the back of Glenn's car that time.
Whoop, all over the place. I think Glenn was all that happy about that as we take those pictures from the BP race cam in Glenn Seaton's car as he heads down. Lap 25 of the 1987 James Hardie 1000, and now we're 1 hour old as this scrap between Andrew Madecki in 35 and Steve Soper rages.
Indeed.
Andrew back in front again. They've swapped 3 or 4 times in the last couple of laps.
It's been sensational. Whilst we were watching that great battle between the two Nissan pilots, these guys weren't exactly sleeping. Soper got back, and then Madecki clawed back once more, and look, just runs a little wide there. Soper in the draft now of car 35. Faced with the prospect of making a tough decision, which side do you round somebody up? I noticed that Madecki's got something flapping on the front left-hand side of the car.
It's gone now.
I think it was a decal.
That was had. All appears okay. See what sort of lap times they're delivering. Meanwhile, Warren Cullen rushes to the pits in the duo gold Commodore. Gary Sprague gets in, Cullen out. So they've only survived exactly 60 minutes of racing before they required 120 litres of fuel and 4 more. Slick tyres.
Andrew Madecki, Steve Soper behind the wheel of those 2 leading cars as they come up Mountain Straight once more. Long and lean, Andrew Madecki. Steve Soper, they're both about the same age, both about 35 years of age, but Soper looks more like 19. Very, very youthful, and belies those looks because he is fast and he is aggressive. Been here to Bathurst, of course, previously, and was immediately on the pace, and he's certainly on the pace at the moment as he chases Madecki across the top of the mountain. Soper, winner at Silverstone in the Tourist Trophy in '83. Which certainly showed his mettle, and of course a winner this year both at Zolder and at Nürburgring.
Motorcraft pit report. Wayne Wilkinson getting out of the Can-Am Commodore. Graham Cameron on board now.
Was in 21st place when they came in to make this stop. Fuel, tyres, driver change. Not the slickest pit stop on record.
BMW's really out of shape, getting down into Forest Elbow as the leaders approach. We've got the clock on them. We'll see what sort of times Andrew Madiki is churning out at the moment. Whichever of the BMWs that car was, it was lifting its inside front wheel that time across the second of the humps. Looked as though it may have been Winnie Vogt. So Soper opting for the inside here. Will the traffic work out in his favour? It doesn't. Madiki held up quite substantially by car 43. And now Soper has the opportunity on the inside once again. That time through it was a 2:23, but Soper comes back under brakes. Very, very strong. He can thank Vogt for that. Madiki will be cursing. So their times have remained pretty consistent for about the last 60 minutes.
Well, consistently fast as these two go hammer and tong up front. Car 24, one of the NZ Nissans in the pits, was in 15th place.
That's Kent Bagent getting out of the car.
And closing the door.
Or is it? In fact, it's Graham Bowkent.
Yeah, Graham Bowkent started in that car, and it doesn't look like Kent Bagent is going to get a drive. At least not in the immediate future. Let's go to the pits and to Richard Hay.
Well, yes, indeed, the Bajan Nissan is in the pits, and we're going to try and find out exactly what's wrong with it at the moment. The bonnet is up on the car. The bonnet is up on the car and they're wheeling it away, so it looks as though it could well be fairly terminal. All the timing gears being moved out the way, as you can probably see, to allow the car into the garage. So they're obviously intending to try and
Okay, we'll leave you there, Richard, because obviously nothing's happening for the Nissan, and they're out of business as across the top we watch once more Steve Soper, Andrew Madeki leading the way in this great race of 1987, the James Hardie 1000, going hammer and tong. They continue to lead. They've dropped off Andy Rouse somewhat in the ANZ Sierra, car number 9. He's got his own problems now with Klaus Niedzwitz and the other of the Eggenberger entries, car 7. 5th position held by Alan Grice, of course, still ahead of Peter Brock, leading the Commodore Brigade, that pair. Slipping down Conrad past the car 90. That's Johnny Smith in the Toyota Corolla. Competing, of course, in the lower capacity class here at Mount Panorama this afternoon. Leading that class, in fact. That's the way they are as they come round over the start-finish line. Steve Soper continues to lead for Ford Sierra from Andrew Madeki in the Oxo car in 2nd place. Klaus Ludwig is now up to 3rd place, rather. Klaus Niedwitz in the 2nd Eckenberger entry, ahead of Andy Rouse in the number 9 ANZ Sierra. Alan Grice in 5th spot. Peter Brock holds down 6th place in the mobile dealer team car. Then we've got the Nissan Skylines of George Fury and Glenn Seaton in 7th and 8th spots respectively. Johnny Cicotto in the car 42 BMW, and Jim Richards rounds out the top 10 in the Hardie Ferrotto 1000 here at Mount Panorama.
Lap 28 of 161, the James Hardie 1000 World Touring Car Championship from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. And what a sensational race that we're seeing here today, of course, between the Eggenberger Ford Sierra of Steve Soper and Port Macquarie's Andrew Madecki. Let's take a look now at hour one on our Toyota spectacular highlights of the 87 Great Race. The race started with Alan Grice making a big charge to the front on the inside. However, it was Andy Rouse and, of course, Steve Soper who set the early pace. As they streamed up towards the top of the mountain for the first time, it was the Grouse Rouse. He headed them. Andrew Madecki in second spot. Steve Soper was third and a closing Alan Grice. Then the first passing move of the race. Soper through on the inside of the NZ banking Sierra. Then accident, number one, Larry Perkins and Neville Crichton getting up. Extensive damage taking out both the Sierra. And then the second Sierra of Dick Johnson going out. A dejected Greg Hansford without a ride. Mountain Straight, the charge for the lead. Toledo Tools race cam caught the action as Andy Rouse took Soper on the outside to get back in front. Madecki, though, was always dangerous. Soper then back in front. Outward Colin Bond, a dead battery. Into the pits came Marcus Osterreich in the BMW Motorsport. We saw Track Cam debuted as the leaders went over the top. And the great scrap for 7th, 8th and 9th. Gentleman Jim Richards, the Aussie Touring Car champ, and carrying our VP race cam, Glenn Seaton. Seaton finally got Jimmy Richards on the inside. Farmer George was ready to pounce. As they headed up out of BP Cutting, Fury went through. Trouble for the Lusty brothers. Into the wall, up, and almost over. The strap at the front continued. Steve Soper just there, but Andrew Madecki of Port Macquarie in the Oxo Super Cube car taking the lead on the outside. That battle has been raging for the last 10 laps. Madecki and Soper, that's hour one of our Toyota replay of the Great Race highlights.
Back with the action, and this is Annette Meverson in one of the Works BMWs. The all-girl crew, of course, Annette Meverson partnering Mercedes Sturmich, the former Miss Austria, in this car, car 47. They had a lot of trouble with it in qualifying, of course, when Mercedes Sturmich put the car into the wall at the top of Mount Panorama and did a lot of damage. But again, those remarkable young men from the TAFE College assisted along with the BMW crew in a rebuild that had them back up and running by lunchtime Friday, just in time for the two girls to put in a qualifying time on Friday afternoon late. We're on lap 31 now as we get back to the lead in this race. The great race of 1987, and up front it's the Sierra battle. Steve Soper continues to lead in car 6 for Eggenberger, Texaco, and Andrew Madecki from Port Macquarie in New South Wales in the Oxo Super Cubes Sierra. Really has done a splendid job. These two have just been dicing for the lead almost from the word go. Of course, Rouse was in there initially, took the lead away briefly from Soper, as you've just seen on our Toyota highlights for the first hour. But these two now have got away from Rouse in the number 9 ANZ entry. And look at this as Madecki closes up through the bottom of Conrod at Murray's Corner. Across the start-finish line again to start lap 32.
Side by side as they head up towards the left-hander at Hell Corner. And Madecki through again. Coming up onto the back of Peter McLeod in the number 10 Mobile Commodore.
Might point out as we're on lap 32 that we'll be seeing more activity in the pits very shortly. The Eggenberger cars are expected to pit between laps 35 and 37, so we're about maybe 10 minutes away from that. Robbie Francevic expected in also in a couple of laps, and the Nissans at around lap 40, so keep our eyes out for those. And at this time, renowned British motor racing authority Neville Hay joins our commentary for the James Hardie 1000. Good to have you with us again, Neville.
Yes, thank you, Wilco. Interesting situation rising, I think, with these pit stops, because somebody's going to have to make a decision in a minute or two who goes in place of Steve Soper. They're very close together, there's no doubt about that. and I would have thought that probably they'll stay as red, so to speak. I think that Sober will hand over to Dodone, and probably Niedewitz will hand over to Klaus Ludwig.
One of the things that I think will be going on through team managers' minds at the moment in this dice for the lead is the fact that Don Smith, with fairness to Don, isn't really as quick as Andrew Medicki, and the European combination is going to be considerably faster as a two-driver combination, and at the end of the day they would be likely to win out in a battle if it were to stay like this. So Soper would be playing a fairly cagey game. Those guys are well aware of what goes on. They didn't just lob yesterday.
No, I think Dodon is going to be a little bit off pace as far as Soper's concerned as well.
Andrew Medicki, 37 years of age. We've said a number of times from Port Macquarie, and best known to us for his great drives in open wheel racing. First in the 79 Malaysian Grand Prix. And I think his most outstanding performance was in the World Sports Car Championship, where he picked up a 4th and a 6th. And there goes Andy Rouse. We'll come back to Andy Medicki because he is battling at the moment with Alan Grice. When I say there he goes, I think it's more a case of here comes Alan Grice than there goes Andy Rouse.
So true.
Two minutes 23.5 for the leaders on that lap. Still circulating at the same sort of pace. And this is the battle for 3rd and 4th beneath the Bridgestone Bridge, and Rouse is dropping off quite considerably from the leading duo.
Yeah, this is the first time I think he's used these tyres actually in a race, and I think he's probably a little bit worried about their duration. This is something that's probably going through his mind. Oh no, he's got a problem.
He's got big problems. Big problems for Andy Rouse.
And if it's going to happen, that's the worst place it can possibly happen, because he's got to go a complete lap if he was wanting to get to the pits, and I can't see that happening.
It's a long way from pit lane, isn't it? Well, Grice gets a free ride through there to move up one notch in the James Hardie 1000.
Gricey to 3rd, 1 hour and 15 minutes of racing, and only 10 vehicles on the lead lap.
Says something, doesn't it, for the pace of the top drivers in the race this year, and their cars, of course. Well, what a blow that's going to be to Alan Moffat.
It's perhaps significant, however, that...
And Brock's in. There's Brock in the background.
Yeah, I was going to say it's significant that that's the first Sierra to break, shall we say, under real pressure, and those are the 3 cars, that's one of the 3 cars that lead in the race.
Peter Brock out of the 05 Mobil entry, David Parsons in. I have the stopwatch on them. 120 litres of fuel, 4 new tyres. Peter Brock was positioned in 6th prior to this stop. Everything's functioning well at the moment. Car settled off its jacks and fires up and out in a time of 25.08 seconds. That's a very good stop by the Mobil team. And David Parsons has his first crack at the James Hardie. Brock's done a good job in the opening stanza, talking with Chief Mechanic George Smith.
Yeah, well, there was no way, and he knew it, that he was going to be able to run with the pace at the front of the field. And look, there's the ANZ Continental Airlines Sierra of Alan Moffat and Andy Rouse. And, well, Alan Moffat will be down in the pit and he'll be seeing this picture and hanging his head in disappointment.
David Parsons rejoins the race in 11th position. Skip's just coming to terms with fresh rubber and a full load of gas at the moment, just getting into the rhythm. It takes a while to get the mind working as well as the motor car.
And of course the action down there in the pits is soon going to be coming thick and fast, with scheduled stops coming up, of course, for the other Sierras.
Parsons is no stranger to the mount. 18th last year with Larry Perkins. They had some gearbox problems with the NZ Commodore, which put them further out of business than they would have liked. But his strongest performance was back in '84 with John Harvey. They were runner-up in the end of the Group C days, and apparently we have Alan Moffat with Richard Hay.
Alan, have you any idea what the problem is with the car at the moment?
Well, I think to stop so suddenly it would have had to be in the transmission or the diff, but until Andy gets back we won't be certain.
That's fairly serious. Then it looks as though the car might even not go out again today.
Well, we can't get it. You know, you have to be able to get it back here to work on it. We're not allowed. Andy's not going to change the transmission by himself. So I'm afraid it's the end of the day for our ANZ car today.
Great shame then for Alan Moffat at the moment, but more pit stops are due. Peter Brock, incidentally, came in 7 laps ahead of schedule. So there's a few plans going awry out there at the moment.
Thank you, Richard Hay, with that Motorcraft pit report. And we're watching David Parsons, 11th position in the Noble Commodore. So, Neville, the tapestry begins to unravel. The Sierras were tipped to have problems with transmission, with axles, with differential, potentially with gearbox. Certainly that's what sidelined Soper and Rouse in the 7th round of the World Championship at Silverstone. And there may be that question mark again today.
I think it's got to be a significant question mark over the Sierras as to whether or not they're going to survive from the point of view of clutches. We know, in fact, there's a clutch problem on Niedewit's car, and so they're going to have to take a great deal of care with that one.
I noticed Peter Jansen came to the pits then in the Petrotech Commodore. Yellow flag being waved. I wonder what the problem is here. That was Graham Moore in the Strathfield Car Radio Commodore as they went through the right-hander at Bridgestone. Oh, yes. And that's Gary Sprague in Warren Cullen's Super Salvage Duo Gold Commodore.
Well, that's the end of their chances for this year's James Hardie 1000 as we check out the top 10 once more after 32 laps, and Andrew Madecki leads in the Oxo Sierra, followed by Steve Soper, the first of the Eggenberger Texaco cars. 3rd position, the next of the Eggenberger cars with Klaus Niedewitz at the wheel, then Alan Dreiss in the first of the Commodore entries, followed by George Fury. The Moffat Rouse car, of course, has disappeared since then, as we saw. Peter Brock holds down 6th position now, 1 lap down. David Parsons at the wheel, then Seaton in the Nissan, Johnny Giacomo in the BMW, and Jim Richards also in the BMW, rounding out the top 10 in the James Hardie 1000. Alan Price. The pictures coming to you through the Bob Jane 7 Sport race cam. And here's Andrew Madecki now, the leading car. And by a reasonable margin at this stage of the race, with still, of course, so far to go and with first pit stops to come yet. But they are getting close, in fact, for the Eggenberger team. Steve Soper holding down 2nd place, Klaus Niedewitz in 3rd spot. But Madecki really has done a superb job, and I think Neville Hay is surprising quite a few people here today.
He's surprised a lot of people, I think. He's going to surprise people like Steve Soper, who doesn't like to be led in any motor race. I think Steve is sitting there rather hoping that he's going to keep the pace slow and keep that car for himself and Dodone. That's what is going to be his main aims, I think.
Andrew Madecki doing it in style on the top of Mount Panorama. He's the king, at least for the moment, in the James Hardie 1000 for 1987 as he leads Britain's Steve Soper at the wheel of car 6, the first of the Eggenberger Texaco entries, and Soper's teammate Klaus Niedewitz in the number 7 car, holding down 3rd spot at the present time. Hello.
Looks like one of the Commodores smoking profusely. Must be Peter Brock.
Yep, it's the Parsons car. Peter Brock, Parsons car. Parsons at the wheel, of course, only having just got in the vehicle.
And that looks pretty terminal to me. When you get that sort of smoke, you know that something inside isn't doing what it ought to.
The second Brock entry, the 10 car, is also in the pits at the moment. Peter McLeod getting out of the car and handing over to John Crook.
That has happened on lap number 35 when Peter Brock, David Parsons were running 9th on the road. There's Bev Brock. Really hasn't been a great weekend for them so far, although the car is still trying to limp its way down Conrod straight towards the pits.
And small correction there, they didn't change drivers in the 10 car. Peter McLeod is still at the wheel.
Correct. GIO Bridge as the team await the arrival of the boss. Car number 15. Parsons, in fact, in the Peter Brock car.
Very, very slowly.
And a very, very quick pit stop for Glenn Seaton, who was running, as I recall, 5th on the road.
And I think I've just seen the leader also make his stop.
Yes, here we are. 35, Andrew Madecki in the pits, the race leader. And also Steve Sober is in. So the two top cars in the pits simultaneously.
So this is going to be a battle in the pits between the two teams.
Let's go.
Here's Peter McKay.
Great to see an Australian car up there at the head of the race. How's it going? Okay?
No problems at all. We've just had the alternator light come on, but I'm hoping that's not too serious. So if everything else is, we're doing it comfortably. Tires are good, brakes are good, engine's running good.
Thanks, mate.
It's Andrew Madecki.
Yes, a bit difficult to hear there with all the confusion, the noise that goes on in the pits during these stops. There's Soper. Pierre Dieudonné now in the car. Soper handing over to him.
And more drama as Peter Brock comes in, 05. A 05 car, I mean, of Peter Brock's. David Parsons at the wheel, and only taken over. And the crew are onto it very quickly indeed. Not a good sign, though, for Peter Brock. So they continue down in their pit bay. There's David Parsons at the wheel. And more dramas on the circuit for Alan Grice. Alan Grice limping around the circuit. We believe very, very low on juice.
Yeah, this is a sort of a limp-in job as far as Grice is concerned. He's taken it right to the limit as far as juice is concerned. But I don't like the other dials either. Things do not look too happy there. Grice is having a good look himself at the moment. Alex Grice. What's happening in there?
Looks like some kind of diff or maybe gearbox problems for Alan Grice. He's taking it very easy as he heads down towards the pits. He's got problems. Peter Brock, by the way, or David Parsons, I should say, in the Peter Brock 05 car is in and out of the pits, back on the racetrack. Of course, Soper and Madecki are both back out.
And Grice is unbuckling his seatbelts. He's on his way in quite obviously. He doesn't want to talk about it right now, and I can't say I could blame him.
And 05, by the way, didn't go back onto the track. They pushed it around the back of the pit lane. So out of business for Peter Brock.
Yeah, gearbox and diff on that car looking a bit umpty.
Here he comes, and Richard Hay standing by there to call the action. Take it away, Dick.
When Percy standing right alongside the car dives into it, Gracie out, Percy in, all four wheels and tyres being changed again. They're going all over the place. The Bauquet Nissan, incidentally, has just left the pits once again. That was gearbox problems with that car, but Gracie strapping Win into the car. And it's interesting to note that all of these cars have come in early. They're all about 4 laps early. We were told Gracie would come in at 40 laps. The car started up again, straight out of the pits, and maybe that wasn't the quickest of pit stops, but it certainly everything got done okay, and there didn't seem to be any other problems other than the fact that it needed fuel and tyres.
Thank you, Richard Hay, with that Motorcraft Pit Report. Win Percy at the wheel of the Chickadee, Bob Jane T-Mark's Commodore. He heads up the hill. As the second of the Oxo Supercube Sierras finds its way past on the inside.
The performance belies the gauges, but good luck to him if it keeps going.
Certainly, if anybody can nurse a car, Win Percy can, apart from throwing it at the bank, as we all know here on Friday. He's very well established for the fact that he's very gentle on a car.
Skyline, George Fury in the pits. Seaton's been in and out by this stage, managing their pit stops well. Was in 7th place, George Fury. Of course, the lead is changing all the time now as cars come in for their first pit stops. In fact, the number 7 Eggenberger Texaco car with Klaus Niedzwitz is in fact in the race lead at the moment, yet to pit. But I see they're getting ready over there to do it. So we expect to see him in at any moment. But for right now on the track, it's Niedzwitz in front.
And we're watching Win Percy now, doing his first lap in the car. It'll be interesting to see the Sierra, one of the Sierras, the Eggenberger Sierras, not too far ahead of him at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how he copes with that. He's got a fair amount of traffic to contend with.
Now, who have we had in? We've had Madecki, Soper, they've both been in. Grice, Fury, Seaton has been in. Brock has been in, and McLeod has been in. So Richards and Chicotto have not been in yet, and just awaiting on confirmation, but you will certainly find Niedzwitz leads. Chicotto and Richards will be running 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, the BMWs, of course, will go longer without a pit stop than anything else. A, they're non-turbo, and B, they're a very small, efficient engine.
We saw the 2 Sierras.
Oh, having said that, we've got one with his armour, and that looks to me like a problem for the Winnevoit car. He's got his armour, and that car has slowed right down.
Yes, he's headed towards the pit area. We'll have to wait and see what the problem is. Meantime, Win Percy, car number 2. Getting back on the pace after a exceptionally slow down lap by Alan Grice after problems running out of gas, or almost out of gas. They're coming up on the Gary Rush, Tony Noski, Kalari Transport Commodore. And they run it out side by side, heading up the mountain.
I think he confused Win a little bit there because he put his indicator out, which Win thought, come by me on the left, and then waved him by on the right. And here's the BMW, and out of the car and helping it along. And I wonder whether that is something silly like fuel. Scooting it up to the pits. And he's made it.
Certainly hasn't been the week for the BMW team from Munich. They've had a number of problems here going to work with the car.
Yeah, that's a little bit more than fuel. That's something I think a bit more dramatic.
There's the race leader, has just pulled up in the pit area. That's Klaus Niedzwitz. And that should almost put Andrew Madecki somewhere up towards the front, Gary will go.
Yes, it does. That lightning pit stop on the part of Soper and Madecki put them back on the track a lot quicker than most people expected, and they are still up now, the front-running cars, with Niedzwitz having come into the pits. Grice also, despite his slowdown lap, is still well-placed, followed by Chicotto, Richards, Fury, Seaton, and Francevic. Robbie Francevic, in the second of the BMW cars, has now come up into the top 10, along with Juan Manuel Fangio in the BMW.
So we'll be picking those other cars up as we, at the moment, concentrate on the lead changes and the outright contenders heading to the pits for their stops. Car number 7 underway quickly. That was a very quick stop by the Rudy Eggenberger team.
And this is the Hardie's Heroes winner, the man who set the fastest time in qualifying for this year's race, Klaus Ludwig, as we see another incident here at the Hell Corner. Round and round goes car 32. The Warren Cullen, Gary Sprague entry.
It's really been in the
wars.
In the wars today.
I want to know who helped him, and I think Andy Rouse is down there in the pits and has finally made it back there, so it'll be interesting to know just what happened to that car. It might be an idea as to what's going to happen to the other Sierras, perhaps.
Well, I think we can throw some light onto that, Neville. I have Andy with me at the moment in our pit studio. And as you know, the ANZ Ford Sierra was performing literally flawlessly. It was going great guns. And then all of a sudden, Andy, you just lost a couple of 100 revs on the straight and things started to degenerate from there.
That's right. We'd lost a bit of straight line speed because the turbo boost had lowered itself for some reason. That was all right. I was going quite nicely. We didn't want to be going too hard anyway. But then coming around the corner onto the pit straight, suddenly a big bang and there's no drive. So the transmission is broken somewhere. It's always been a worry for us, that particular thing, and this track's very hard on the transmission, a lot of low gear work and over bumps, and I'm afraid it's taken its toll.
So what does that lead you to think about later this afternoon with your opposition and say, for example, the Eggenberger cars? Are they going to be in the same sort of boat?
Well, they're certainly subject to the same sort of risk. They probably realise now that it's more of a problem than perhaps they thought in the first place. So they probably learn from what's happened to us, I would think.
The sort of pace that you were running early on was around about 23s and low 24s. It's considerably slower, quite obviously, than your qualifying setup, but was that a pace that was designed to take you right through 1,000 Ks?
That's right. We planned to run 23s and 24s as long as everything was good. But with the drop in boost, of course, that slowed us down over a second. It changed the handling of the car a little bit. But it was going well. I was happy enough. You know, we could have just fixed the boost as soon as I came in for the pit stop. But unfortunately, we didn't get that far.
Well, commiserations, Andy, but thank you very much for calling past with us this morning. And we shall talk to you later on and look forward to seeing you next weekend for round 9 of the World Championship. So Andy Rouse out of business for just the moment.
Thank you, Neil Crompton. Klaus Ludwig with a brilliant pit stop, according to our charts now, has gone through to take over the lead. Andrew Madecki in second spot, Steve Soper in third, so Sierra's still 1, 2, 3.
After that, you can make your own arrangements the way that these pit stops are going.
That looks like the second of the Oxo Supercube Sierra's in. That's the number 34 car.
John Giddings and Bruce Stewart co-driving this vehicle, of course. They were not quite on the same pace as Andrew Madecki, obviously, in qualifying. Now, John Giddings started the race. Driver change going on there, so it will be Bruce Stewart taking over the wheel. And they've been circulating comfortably and without too many dramas. So, and I guess that's their aim. As we've said before, it is almost impossible to maintain the pace that these front runners are setting. And the wise course for those who can't stand the early pace is to sit back, run as quick as possible, run as safely as possible, and be there at the finish if you can.
Well, down the straight comes the Ford.
There's our race leader heading down to Caltech's chase. Locks up the front brake, as you can see there, through the chase. Let's recap the current positions for you on our Castrol scoreboard. Klaus Ludwig leads the great race on lap 39. Andrew Madecki runs second in the Oxo Supercube Ford. Third is Steve Soper in the second of the Eggenberger cars. Fourth is Wim Percy, now in the Bob Jane T-Marks Commodore. At fifth place is Jimmy Richards in the JBS BMW.
Lap 42, 161. The 87 James Hardie 1000. And problems already for Wynne Percy in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore as we take race cam. As you can see, the car is running very, very warm indeed. The water level down completely. Percy has still been persevering with the car since he took over from the pit stop. And as we recap for you, going into the last break, Klaus Ludwig continues to lead the 87 Great Race. Andrew Madecki in the Oxo Supercube car is second. Steve Soper is third in the second of the Eggenberger cars. Then this Commodore, the Bob Jane T-Mart's car with Wynne Percy at the wheel, followed by Jimmy Richards, Johnny Cicotto, Glenn Seaton, Fury, Francevic and Fangio. On our Toyota replay for you, this incident at the top of the hill with one of the BMWs, number 42. Johnny Cicotto having an anxious moment as he tapped a slower car. It held him up momentarily. He's back out on the racetrack at the moment. In fact, there he is on screen making his way up Motorcraft Hill.
No harm done, at least panel damage, but it wouldn't have done the tyres much good.
Wouldn't have done his stride any good either, knowing Johnny, he doesn't very often throw it at the bank.
They'd be about due for a pit stop anyway for new rubber and fuel, I guess.
They'd go on a bit longer because they'll have one stop less than the Fords and they will actually spread them out a little bit. And this is where, of course, the BMW strength is going to come. And we've got a lot of wind around here at the moment, and although we've got some black clouds, I don't think there's any likelihood of it raining. But if it did happen, of course, their pit stops being a little bit different, they'd be delighted they could get onto wet tyres quick.
BMWs have got 4 representatives now in the top 10 at this stage of the race. Because what we don't have in the race is a 05 Peter Brock David Parsons mobile Commodore. Let's find out why from David Parsons himself.
Situation with David, he came into the car, was only there for a couple of laps. Peter came in, I think, about 1 hour and 10 minutes into the race, and it was about 7 laps early. Skip, what happened?
Well, I believe that it was run a bit short on fuel, and that's the message that we got back to the pits there. So it was a bit of a race driver change, and slid into the car, off I went, which wasn't any problem. Like all the temperatures, everything else was fine. But the car didn't seem to be pulling quite the same sort of revs as was earlier on the Saturday afternoon. Got up through the cutting there, and I noticed it getting slower and slower and what have you. And they come out of the cutting there, and it just went a hell of a rattle and a heap of smoke, and it was all over.
No idea what the problem was?
Pardon?
No idea what the problem was? I mean, is it like a crank or rockers or what?
Well, I'd nearly say it was bearings, not bearings, I'd say, by the rattle in it.
All right, mate, that's a bit of bad luck, but we'll look forward to a good performance from you next weekend at Calder.
No problem.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, Neil. Car number 43 is still worked upon in the pits.
Willie Vodka, Olivia Grouillard.
Yeah, it's been a long stop, that has. I don't think we're going to sort of have too many worries about that. Willie Voigt, of course, is the European Touring Car Champion and concentrated on that rather than the World Touring Car Championship events. But he's an unhappy man and an unlucky man here in the great race.
Well, there are other BMWs having a little more success out on the circuit at the moment. They've got 4 representatives in the current top 10. Jim Richards, Johnny Cicotto, Robbie Francevic and Juan Manuel Fangio, the second. All in the top 10 at the moment, along with 2 Nissan Skylines, 1 Commodore and 3 Sierras.
Yeah, I bet my old friend Frank Gardner's giggling all over his face here, because to have Jimmy Richards ahead of the works cars must be really tickling. And here is Jimmy Richards, and he's put some distance between himself and Cicotto now. No doubt he's very happy with this. These cars are reckoned to be about 15 brake horsepower down on the works cars, but they certainly aren't showing it here.
Jimmy Richards having a great scrap in this race, running 5th on the road. One of Australia's and formerly New Zealand's most experienced and talented race car drivers, a real pro.
the Toyota gallery of champions, Jim Richards is proving to be the invincible star of Aussie motor racing in the mid-80s. Life has certainly begun at 40 for Jim. He's winning more events now than ever before. He's a triple Hardie winner, endurance champion, Better Break Series winner and twice Australian touring car champ. Success first came at the mountain for Jim when he teamed with Peter Brock back in 1978. Those old days with the dealer team were a polished act. The combination of Brock and Richards was unbeatable for 3 successive years. In the following 3 years, Jim campaigned the JPS BMW 635 in Group C trim. The simple fact was, the old regulations never really suited the Bavarian beast. However, at the introduction of Group A, Jim's stocks improved. Bathurst still hasn't been the best of hunting grounds, although there's been some memorable moments. But in just about everything else, you sure couldn't miss the flying expatriate Kiwi. In the stunning M3 Series, Jim has been 87's big winner, a trend he's hoping to continue.
Thumbs up from Jim, and by G, he's got it figured at the moment, running in 5th place on the track. Klaus Ludwig continues to lead in the Eggenberger Texaco Sierra. That car, by the way, the car 7 Eggenberger Texaco vehicle, has set fastest lap time of 2 minutes 22.08. Andrew Madecki holds down 2nd place still, then Steve Sober in the 2nd of the Eggenberger cars.
So Richards heads over the top of Mount Panorama. Still able to hold that pace. He's been doing it beautifully since the race started. Be great for Frank Gardner, but I wonder just how disappointed Peter Floor must be, and with Neil Crompton at the moment in the pits.
Well, a day of mixed fortunes, as you know, for the BMW team. They've got some cars performing well, they've got some others who've had some problems, and the man that's responsible for all of the BMW racing operations worldwide is this man, Peter Floor. Peter, the BMW game plan at the moment is still looking quite handsome.
I can't hear a singer, I don't have any voice.
I'm sorry. We have one of your cars in the pits at the moment, Roland Ratzenberger at the wheel. Greg Peewee-Siddle, the team manager, is sitting at the front of the car. Peter, you've had a difficult day in some respects, but nevertheless I think a BMW will be running strong at the end of the day.
Well, it looks like if we had difficulties at the beginning, but it looks like if we can cope with it, and we'll see how it takes along.
Well, that was an excellent stop then from Roland. You must be very impressed with the local BMW operation and Frank Gardner's team.
Well, I know that Frank Gardner is an utmost professionalist and he's doing an excellent job. He's proving that he knows the Australian scene. It looks to me like if we are starting more or less in a very difficult position, but we wait until the race ends.
Do you believe that the scales will tip in BMW's favour at the end of 1,000 kilometres?
Well, I'll never give up hoping, you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Neil Crompton, with Peter Floor. There's car 42, Johnny Cicotto, still trailing Jimmy Richards. There's the gap as they head beneath the bridge and head up Mountain Straight yet again.
Sierras might be running 1, 2, 3 at the moment, but everywhere you turn you see a BMW. Jim Richards pursued by Johnny Cicotto up Mountain Straight at the moment, and whilst all that was happening and Neil Crompton was talking to Peter Floor, we saw the 41 car come in as well. Klaus Ludwig leads the race in the 7 Eggenberger Texaco car. Then Andrew Madecki holding down 2nd place, car 35 for Oxo Supercube. Steve Sober 3rd spot in the 2nd of the Texaco vehicles. Alan Grice leads the Commodore Brigade in position 4. Then Jim Richards in car 44. The JPS BMW is 5th spot at the moment.
1:47 of 161, the James Hardie 1000, and only seconds ago, Lucio Cesario in the number 57 Caltex Alpha has gone off in the S's. The car was running 38th in the field. Let's have a look at the replay, courtesy of Toyota. You can see exactly what happened.
Oh, launched it.
Straight through the curb, missed it completely, creases it twice against the concrete wall, and the car is now out. And for the first time in the James Hardie Classic, a pace car comes onto the circuit. And the pace car will now wait until the race leader forms up behind. The rest of the drivers will then just cool it up so the advantage that our race leader had will disappear.
First time, of course, that this has been used in the James Hardie 1000, and it's been introduced specifically to deal with problems that we've seen there with the Colin Bond Alpha. Lucio Cesario, I think, was at the wheel, and of course the race could not possibly continue full tilt with that car in that position, and they'll be out to get it removed. But whilst that operation is taking place, the pace car will be out to prevent the race running ahead full steam, and of course the cars will have to form up behind it. And as Mike said, they will in fact, although not allowed to pass each other, are allowed to close up. So it's going to really mean a new complexion on the race once they've cleared the track and the pace car moves off. In the pits, you see some of the drivers taking advantage of the opportunity to come in and top up fuel and maybe make a driver change, check tyres, etc., because they're really not going to lose anything by doing so.
Yeah, the big interesting factor here is that when the pace car, in fact, comes out, they have to line up behind him. When you choose to go into the pits, that's fine, but you can't come out of the pits until the last car has gone by. That can sometimes work to your advantage, sometimes it doesn't.
One thing it will do, car number 42 has gone into the pits. We take this Motorcraft pit report. That, of course, is Johnny Cicotto. Now, he's taken this time to go in on the yellow flag. Johnny steps out, Gianfranco Brancatelli steps in, but they will automatically drop one lap because they will not be able to come out of the pits until the pace car and the entire field passes the start-finishing line.
Well, the lineup as the pace car came out on lap 45 was Klaus Ludwig, the leader for Eggenberger Texaco. Andrew Madecki was in second place for Oxo Supercube Sierra. Third place, Steve Soper in the second Eggenberger car. Fourth place, Alan Grice in the Bob Jane T-March Commodore. Fifth place was the JPS BMW of Jim Richards. Car 42, the car we just saw, Johnny Cicotto, with Brancatelli now at the wheel, was in sixth place, followed by Glenn Seaton in the first of the two Nissan Skylines. Car 45 was in next position on the track when the pace car came out. And car 45, of course, was Robbie Francevic. That's the second of the JPS BMW cars, followed by car 30, George Fury in ninth spot, and 10th spot was held by car number 10, the second of the Brock Mobile Commodores.
Might explain also, Gary, that the cars, as you can see there, are lined up. Gianfranco Brancatelli in the BMW, the Nissan Gazelle also lined up. The drivers are not allowed to come straight back onto the racetrack and form up behind the queue. If they elect to go to the pit area during yellow flag laps, they will drop a lap, and that then comes back to the calculations of team managers, whether or not it is safer to make a pit stop under a green flag situation where they can carry out a pit stop in 30 seconds or 35 seconds, or drop a complete lap. This could be costly for Brancatelli and Cicotto.
Certainly is, and it can also work to their advantage though, because if they have a car that maybe has a problem, if they've got a car that has a problem, then that car can in fact be repaired, and it takes, of course, the pace car longer than 2 minutes to lap.
Let's have a look at what caused this. The number 57, as we take our Toyota instant replay, just launched over the top of the curbing, coming down through the S's, hits the wall there and comes back for a second hit at the wall. How lucky was the Trevor Crowe number 44 car going through, and also another of the BMW Motorsport entries. I must say that the driver was okay. There is Lucio Cesario, as we called, the driver who has stuck the Caltex Alpha into the wall, and that was a pretty hard hit. Yellow flags continue to be waved. And of course the crash vehicles, the pickup trucks, are able to go to the scene of the accident, and no longer will the drivers have to deal with having a race in behind the tender vehicles here at Mount Panorama. World Championship rules, I think it's a great idea.
What should happen at the end of the pace car situation, Mike, it will turn its lights off and then do one more lap. So when the lights turn off, it's just got one more lap to do.
Well, we'll follow that. On the Castrol scoreboard, Klaus Ludwig is the race leader. Andrew Madecki in second. Steve Soper is third. Alan Grice is fourth. Jimmy Richards is fifth. Sixth place, that will change. Johnny Cicotto Brancatelli. Seventh is Seaton and Bow. Eighth, Robbie Francevic and Ludwig Finauer. Ninth is the farmer, George Fury and Terry Shield. And 10, John Crook and Peter McLeod from the Mobile Commodore.
The pace car continues to lead the field here after 47 laps in the James Hardie 1000 for 1987. The reason, car 57, the Colin Bond Caltex Alpha with Lucio Cesario at the wheel, into the wall at the S's. There's car 35. Don Smith has taken over the wheel now from Andrew Madecki. Second placed on the track, but they've taken advantage of this, of course, to come into the pits. But, well, it depends on how it's going to pan out for them, whether it's a good move or a bad one.
I would say it's a bad move. If they got a serious problem with the car, because the pace car is lapping so much slower than normal, they would have actually saved time. But because it was just a short stop, they're obviously losing time. You can see that he's sitting there waiting, and he's going to have to rejoin at the back of the field.
Yeah, OK, but now Bill Brown, sitting at home watching this, knows that Madecki, when the pace car went out, was in second place on the racetrack. Where is he now?
A good question, and we'll sort that one out once racing starts. But what will happen is he will be at least one lap down.
OK.
So you can expect him probably to be in somewhere around about 8th or 9th.
In other words, he goes back out on the tail of the field.
That's right, and of course he's lost a lap while the pace car is out there. The other interesting thing, though, is the way that it closes the field up. What you should expect to see happen is at the end, as we were saying before the break, the pace car will switch its lights off on its final lap and do one lap with the lights, the flashing lights on the roof, extinguished. And at that point, he will then wave past all the cars that are in front of the lead car. So Klaus Niedzwitz will then take up the position behind the pace car until the pace car then pulls in, which allows the cars that are between Niedzwitz and the pace car to catch back up.
Right, and that's exactly what's happening down there. I don't know whether Don Smith's quite clear on the situation either, but it's being explained to him. Andrew Madecki giving him some words of advice about how the car is handling.
The other thing that the turbos don't like is that they don't particularly like having to slow down like this. It doesn't really help a turbocharged car to go too slowly, and they are going very slowly. On the other hand, one man's going to be delighted. That's going to be Win Percy. His car's overheating. This is one chance he's got, with a bit of luck, to let it cool off a bit.
Here comes the pace car down Conrod Straight. The field tailing out behind it. They're still trying to remove the 57 car from up in the S's. I would imagine that probably when they go through this time, they will allow the cars in the pit lane, including 35, Don Smith, to come out and rejoin at the rear of the field.
Yeah, that's what they'll do. I think they'll also probably take the opportunity to tidy up a few more cars that have stopped around the circuit as well. This is why there's a number of wreckers out on the circuit. It's a very different story to last year, when, of course, there wasn't a pace car situation in the days gone by, and we had people being towed in from around the circuit. Well, of course, that doesn't happen anymore.
Thankfully.
Thankfully, yes. I must say that was the first thing that I saw when I first came here last year, and I thought, goodness me, you just can't get away with that. But they did.
Obviously, with the introduction of the pace car and with this system, Richard, Neville, Australian drivers need to learn a whole lot more about tactics in this situation.
Indeed they do. I have a feeling that the car number 35, the Andrew Madecki Don Smith car, may possibly have been under different ideas as to how the rules worked, and that's why he would have pitted then. I can't believe that at this stage of the race he'd require fuel again. He pitted around about 30 laps, so you wouldn't expect him to pit some 15 or so laps later. So there's Win Percy there, and as we were saying, he's looking fairly happy.
Quite happy. And
one man who won't be happy, of course, is Klaus Ludwig. Not only is there just a simple problem with or relatively simple problem of keeping the turbo cool, he must have terrible memories of the Le Mans 24-hour race in 1986. He'd won the race in 84 and 85. He was leading and going for a hat-trick in 86. And then disaster struck. There was a pace car situation for around 2 hours. And Ludwig's car suffered from exactly the problems we were discussing, overheating and so on, and that caused the demise of that car, having to spend so long at such a slow speed.
The Bajan Bauquet New Zealand skyline has been into the pits and is now coming out onto pit road to join that tail of cars that will come out on the end of the field. And I see that car 40, the BMW of Ratzenberger and Ostreich, has also called into the pits to take advantage of the pace car being on the track. Certainly taking their time, and it looks like, his 47 is in trouble. The girls, Meverson and Sturmitz.
And that's Annette Meverson at the wheel at the moment, with the white helmet on.
Well, she surely couldn't have gone off while the pace car was out.
You never know. She stalled the car, apparently.
I think that it's probably... I think it's probably fairly likely that what she was actually doing was trying to stay out there for as long as possible while the pace car was out. And I would think that the idea was that if she didn't have to make a pit stop while the car was out there, everything would be good.
Car 4, Strathfield Car Radio's entry, going past there, Michelle Delcourt and Graham Moore.
Well, the pace car still out on the circuit. It has also given all of the crews an opportunity to pull in the Larry Perkins car and some of the other cars stranded on the circuit. Let's take time out now to have a look at hour 2 of our Toyota highlights of the 87 Great Race. Andrew Madecki and Steve Soper were hard at it as we entered the second hour of the Great Race. They swapped the lead 4 times. Andy Rouse was slowing dramatically. Alan Grice moved to 3rd. It wasn't too long after that the Rouse car was out. The change of drivers as David Parsons went into the 05 car, Peter Brock taking a breather. However, 2 laps later, the Mobil 05 was smoking heavily and bound for the pit area again, and a DNF. 35, Andrew Madecki in for a very quick pit stop. So too was Steve Soper. Soper was away first, followed by Madecki. And while all that was happening, the Brock car was back in the pits. Parsons was given the bad news on our Motocraft pit report. He was out.
Grice's Commodore was getting warm. He brought it into the pits to top it up with gas. It was almost out. When Percy stepped in, Grice was out, and it was a very quick pit stop. Winnie Vaught giving his machine some assistance to get into the pits. And while that was happening, the Cullen Sprague car went off into the sand track. Klaus Ludwig stepped into the number 7 car, took it out of the pits and into the lead. When Percy looked cool behind the wheel, the motor and the radiator aren't running that way. Johnny Cicotto found himself in a spin as he went for the Castrol's sand trap at the top of the mountain. Fortunately, he was able to continue. Then, of course, Lucio Cesario bombarded the 57 Caltex Alta into the concrete, and that was it. And that is what has in fact caused the pace car to come out onto the circuit. That's updating hour 2 of our Toyota race highlights.
Caltex chase, the cars wending their way down to that point on the track, and the pace car is still out. It really has cast a whole new complexion over events here at Mount Panorama for 1987. Car 3 there, just in behind the pace car, of course, is Peter Jansen and Peter Fitzgerald, but don't make the mistake of believing that they are leading the race when things restart. Of course, that's not the case. All the cars between the pace car and car 7, the Eggenberger Texaco, driven by Klaus Ludwig, will have to slip by the pace car and pick up on the tail of the field.
Let's update for you now how the field is running in the great race. Klaus Ludwig is the race leader. Steve Soper, Eggenberger's 1-2 at this stage. Win Percy runs third in the Alan Grice Commodore. Fourth spot is Jimmy Richards, the Australian touring car champion. Fifth spot, Andrew Madecki, now down a lap. And Don Smith behind the wheel.
Ben Seaton in sixth spot in the first of the Nissans, also a lap down after 48 laps. Robbie Francevic in the second of the JPS BMWs, a lap down as well, followed by George Fury in the second Nissan car. John Crook in the second of the mobile team cars. Of course, Peter Brock 05 off the track and not operating at the moment. And then Gary Brabham and Juan Manuel Fangio in 10th spot, the BMW.
In 11th spot, 42. Gianfranco Brancatelli in the BMW M3, and 12th, John Giddings and Bruce Stewart in the second Oxo car. 13th is veteran Murray Carter in the Netcom car, sharing with Steve Masterton. In 14th spot, car number 37, the Speedway boys, Brian Callahan and Barry Graham. They're down 2. 15th is Graham Cameron and Wayne Wilkinson in car number 19.
Gary Scott and Akihiko Nakaya, car 16 in 16th spot, the Mitsubishi, followed by Trevor Crowe and Ian Tulloch from New Zealand in the BMW, 2 laps down, these guys, of course. Annette Meverson and Mercedes Sturmitz, 3 laps down and maybe a little more because we saw them parked off the circuit a few moments ago. Position 19, Peter Jansen and Peter Fitzgerald, the Holden Commodore, and in position number 20, Graham Moore and Michelle Delcourt, also in a Commodore and 3 laps down. Tony Noski and Gary Rush next, position 21, 3 laps down in their Commodore, followed by Cabbage and Kerry Bailey, position 22. Position 23, Bill O'Brien and Brian Sampson. Position 24, Tony Mulverhill and Ken Matthews. Position 25, Steve Reed and Trevor Ashby. Holden's holding down positions 21 to 25 there. Position 26, Phil Ward, Lyndon Reithmuller in the Mercedes, 4 laps down, as are father and son, Gulson and Gulson in the BMW, position 27. Position 28, Marcus Ostreich and Roland Ratzenberger, down 5 laps in their BMW. Position 29, John Faulkner and Drew Price in the Toyota, leading their category, of course, in the small car class, followed by John Smith and John Faulkner in position 30 for car 91. Then Andrew Bignell and Mark Jennings in position 31, David Ratcliffe and Mark Gibbs in position 32, 6 laps down in their Toyota Corolla. Then in position 33, car 46, Emmanuel Pirro and Roberta Ravalia, their race run for the day, I'd say. 7 laps down on the leaders at this stage. Then Winnie Vaught and Olivia Grouillard in the BMW car 43, holding down 34th spot. And in position 35, Giorgio Francia in the Alfa, 8 laps down.
36th on the road, Kent Bagent, Graham Bowkett in the Nissan, down 11 laps. 37th, 60, Mark Scaife and Grant Jarrett in the Nissan. In 38th spot, and of course retired, the Brock Parsons Commodore. 39th, Bond and Cesario with their retired car. And of course Bob Holden and Gary Wilmington in the Toyota. 41, Moffat and Rouse, that's when the car went out just a little while back. 42nd spot, 32, Cullen and Sprague. 43, Arm and Hahn and Kevin Bartlett. 44, Lusty and Lusty. 45th, Billington and Graham Crosby. And rounding them out, Dick Johnson, Larry Perkins and Neville Crichton, who of course triggered off that accident in the first lap. I'd like to thank our race score boys for bringing you up to date. Those positions are confirmed. And the pace car, I would think, would probably have one more lap around here. The former James Hardie 1000 winner, Bobby Morris, is in fact driving the pace car.
1976, of course, Bobby Morris won this race with John Fitzpatrick. A welcome return for him to Mount Panorama.
To Mount Panorama at Bathurst, World Touring Car Round. James Hardie 1000 pace car, still on the circuit. As you can see, the tender vehicle taking one of those damaged cars back to the pit area at the moment. And of course, the pace car might be something new to our Australian touring car followers here. It is used extensively in Europe. One man who would be able to tell us not only about that, but also what they do in the States is Alan Grice, and he's in the pit studio with Neil Crompton.
Yes, indeed, Mike Raymond. I think it's now a time, Alan Grice, where your international experience will come to the fore. We've seen a situation where the yellow flag has come out, and in some cases there's been a misunderstanding in the interpretation of the rules.
Yes, there are two pace cars or techniques used in different forms of racing in the world. One is the NASCAR pace car system, whereby you can rush into the pits and get back on. As long as the pace car hasn't gone past you, you can catch onto the field and catch them up and not lose a lap. But the FISA interpretation of the pace car rules differs, as do all of their interpretations. And in this instance, if you come into the pits, you lose a lap because you're not allowed to rejoin and catch the field. So it means that you have to, if you come into the pits, you have to wait until the pace car does a complete lap, and of course you lose a lap. Right. We lost a lap the same way at Spa in the 24-hour race with the Works BMWs. Just missed getting out, and you lose a lap.
Now
The situation with your car, we were looking earlier on at some fairly graphic shots on Seven's Bob Jane race cam, and we saw some needles that were hanging up there in the red, and I understand you were getting a low water light, but somewhere along the line the computation isn't right.
Yeah, that's right. The needle that's in the red is the gearbox temperature. That's not unusual. Of course, a race like this, we start with a brand new box with tight clearances and new bearings, etc. And it's not unusual that the temperature starts high, and as the race goes on, the temperature comes down. The water temperature light, the low water light on the left that you saw flashing, there we can see it on screen. I don't know, but it doesn't look like it's flashing. Yes, it is still flashing. That indicates that the water level in the head is low, but the water temperature is not high. So the only thing we can put it down to is a faulty connection.
Well, Gracie, the situation now is the pace car has moved away and the race is back on. Would you at all like to have a chat with Wynne? Because we can probably arrange it for you through our Bob Jane race cam.
Yeah, I guess it'll take him a lap though to get himself back in the swing of things. He's now got to get the car straight back up to race speed and get past and try and stay with those Fords. And unfortunately, the Sierras, with the enormous amount of grunt they've got in a straight line, it makes them easier for them to pass the cars.
Nevertheless, you must be really thrilled at the performance of the car. You're up to third. The car was the short wheelbase version as little as 24 hours ago. It's flying.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the motor car. Obviously, that blinking light's a worry, but we can only put it down to about faulty connection.
Well, let's ask the man himself. Wynne Percy, what's the situation at the moment?
Well, I believe the situation is that we should stay behind the file for one lap after the flashing lights go off. Your guys are now displaying green flags. I don't really want to take the risk of overtaking. That's the problem.
Yeah, with green flags, it's got to mean go, though, Wynne.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
OK, I'm going.
Go for it, Winnie.
Well, that's the best cue I've ever seen. When the boss says go for it, you can get stuck into it.
Well, we'll find out. So, we follow Wynne Percy in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore.
Well, green flags mean go in any book in the world, and he's going for it.
They certainly are.
Gracie, I'm really surprised, to be quite frank, that you've been able to get the car back in the same sort of shape as you started the weekend. Have you noticed any little tweaks or traits in the car that weren't there when you started?
No, the Hardie's Hero lap, the car was certainly not tracking properly. It was going from one side of the road to the other down Conrod, but that was a settling that was taking place with the new chassis rail that we put in, and a wheel alignment fixed that.
Robbie Francevic to the pits, the 1986 Australian Touring Car Champion. He hands over to Ludwig Finua on our Motorcraft pit report, and Goofy about to have his first attack on Mount Panorama.
Yeah, well, that's a good time to pit, really, because he hasn't lost his lap and the car's a bunch, so he'll get out and the bunch he'll have some clear road when he gets out there.
The other information right behind that, you'll see that Jimmy Richards has come in as well, Alan and Neil.
Well, that's
held him up for maybe 10 seconds, I would think.
Yeah, that's a little car like that. 10 seconds is very, very valuable. A bit of a miscue there, I think.
Well, we'll see how good the stop is. We've got the clocks on them. Frank Gardner presiding at the front of the car. Tony Longhurst strapping in. The combination looked so strong in the Castrol 500 at Sandown only a couple of weeks back, and then right at the end it was an engine failure that brought them undone. Are they bolting on D5 Pirellis? Can't quite see the numbers from where I am, but if that's the case, then that's I should think a reasonably soft tyre for this situation.
Yeah, we're running a pretty soft tyre. I had to ease off at one stage and bring them back to life a bit, and they did. They came right back to life, and I was able to get back into 23s again.
Well, they've been there now for 35 seconds, plus what Mike mentioned before, which we think was about 10 seconds. Tony Longhurst, finger at the ready to fire the BM back to life.
Looks like they've
topped
her up with Castrol and now can't get it fired.
They've got a problem.
Yep.
49 seconds. This is precious time. You cannot afford to lose 10 seconds in a race like this. Now, what is going on here, Gracie?
Well, they're trying to break the dry brake system. It's maybe they're thinking that they've pressurised the system and it's flooding the engine.
So they're trying to release the air build-up, the pressure in the thing.
Yeah.
So we should explain that one side is fuel intake and the other side is for vent, and normally you have a vent bottle attached.
Yes, it is. It makes our 19-second stop look pretty good.
Yeah, you're looking really flash. 1 minute 17. And remember, of course, that Jim had done such a splendid job to really climb back back through the field with amazing speed. This is very, very dangerous, tipping fuel like this all over pit lane.
Yeah, it certainly is.
They were going so well because they had managed to catch and pass the Johnny Cicotto CBM BMW M3. Now a minute 38 passes in the pits. And still no sign of a vent bottle. I don't know whether I'm misinterpreting the situation here. That's a little bit of soapy water to try and dilute the fuel, which is obviously a smart, safe and sensible thing to do.
When there's petrol around like that, I'm quite happy to be up here on your commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. Safer to be in a red jacket on a day like today, I think.
I noticed Winner's hanging on to one of the work Sierras out there. It'd be interesting to know what the times are, but he's...
well, we'll get those for you. Just before we do leave you, Gracie, I'm sure you've got a very kind word for those lads at the TAFE College that work so hard to get your car back in shape.
Yeah, me and many other crews here, they've done a superb job. It's not the fact that they just tack the cars together to give you some old rubbishy box to go out and race with. They put you back with a completely straight motor car, and then my guys have made it into a race car from that. The two teams have done a superb job with my car.
Yeah, they really do a great job. And Jim Richards, should I say Tony Longhurst, now rejoins the race. Thanks for your comments, Alan. Thanks for dropping by, and I hope all goes well for you this afternoon. And you don't have any fuel problems.
Or water problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Gracie.
Alan Grice with Neil Crompton in the pit area, and not the best of stops for Frank Gardner's JPS BMW team.
Disastrous stop, in fact, because they were not only in fourth place outright in the race, of course they were leading their class. The BMWs being in the 1600 to 2500 cc class. But that's no longer the case. In fact, teammate Ludwig Finnar in the second JPS car will be leading the under 2.5 litre category from Gary Brabham in the 41 BMW and Johnny Cicotto in the 42 car. Klaus Ludwig, of course, leads the race. Steve Soper in second place. They're the two Texaco cars. Then Alan Grice, Win Percy at the wheel in third spot. Jim Richards, of course, Tony Longhurst will be out of that place now, and it'll be Glenn Seaton moving up into fifth place in the first of the Peter Jackson Nissans. Then George Fury, the second Nissan car. John Crook and Peter McLeod in the dealer team Commodore in position number 7. Position 8, Gary Brabham and Juan Manuel Fangio in the BMW. Position 9, Robbie Francevic, Ludwig Finnar now at the wheel of that car. And position 10, Johnny Cicotto and Gianfranco Brancatelli.
Lap 54 of 161, the James Hardie 1000 World Touring Car Championship race. Glenn Seaton, car number 15, presently running fourth on the racetrack. Coming up behind Tony Noski in the Kalari Transport Commodore.
As we take BP race cam, you'll see one of the Sierras very quickly will bolt onto the tail of Clem. There it is with the headlights ablaze. Klaus Ludwig is the race leader in the first of the Texaco cars, number 7, the 6th car, running in 2nd spot. Win Percy 3rd in the number 2 Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore, and Glenn Seaton in 15, and there goes the Texaco Star beneath the bridge and heading up to Bridgestone Corner, the right-hander. John Bow at the wheel of the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Got some great picks coming out of that. So both Nissans are running well. Another one parked off there on the left-hander as they go up.
You'll notice, Mike, that the Sierras are not quick round corners, and that the Nissan's quite able to stay with him over the top of the mountain there. It's only when they come down on the really fast parts that the Sierras begin to get away. This is to some degree because they're under-tired for the amount of power that they have.
Yes, I take your point, Neville. They really haven't got to worry about the cornering when you've got so much grunt in a straight line. In fact, John Bow's done a good job over the top of the mountain to stay in touch with the Sierra. They come down to Toledo Tools turn. A fascinating race unravelling here at Mount Panorama today. The clouds are still rolling in and they're getting blacker.
Situation is this on lap 54, Mark. There are only 3 cars now on the leading lap. That's Klaus Ludwig in the number 7 Eggenberger Texaco car, then Pierre Dieudonné in the 2nd of the Texaco cars, and Win Percy in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. 4th place, and only just a lap down, is Glenn Seaton in the number 15 Peter Jackson Nissan, followed by George Fury, car 30, Peter McLeod in the Dealer Team Mobile Commodore, car number 10, then Brabham in 7th position, Gary Brabham, of course, that is in car 41, the BMW, followed by car 42, Johnny Cicotto in 8th place. 9th spot is held by Andrew Madecki in the Oxo Supercube Sierra, and 10th spot held also by BMW car 45, Robbie Ludwig Finnar, now at the wheel of that car.
Now, the leading car, to me, seems to have slowed a little bit from where he was, because we've got a decreasing gap between the Dieudonné car in 2nd place, which is now much closer, who's got away a little bit from Win Percy, but those 3 now quite close together on the road.
Thank you, Neville. John Bow heads up Motorcraft Hill yet again towards BP Cutting. Andrew Madecki, of course, who led this race, is now handed over to Don Smith in the Oxo Supercube Ford Sierra. He's in the pit studio at the moment with Neil Crompton.
Mike, when we went to our last commercial break on the Castrol scoreboard, it read like a nightmare for Andrew Madecki, because all of a sudden his name wasn't in the top 10, and it had been up there, in fact, right at the top of it for so many laps leading a round of the World Touring Car Championship. Andrew, there seems to have been some confusion. Gricey helped us out in explaining the situation, but it seems as though sitting in the pits was a chronically bad thing to do.
Yeah, I must say, it looks like I've made a mistake. I've done very little in long distance racing. The only racing I've done is Group C sports cars with John Fitzpatrick. And in that, you know, you dive in when the pace car's out, and you can join on again at the tail, just like the way they do it in the States, and that's what I expected to be able to do. You know, I couldn't believe that everybody else wasn't doing the same thing.
Yeah, well, I think your car is back in position 11 at this stage. Do you think in any way, shape or form the situation is retrievable?
Well, we can only try. The speed that we were going was very, very comfortable for both me and the car. I think I can, I know I can go a bit harder, and as soon as we've got Don over with his statutory 3rd of the race, you know, I'll be going like buggery.
You've knocked on the door of international competition a couple of times. You're the winner of the Malaysian Grand Prix. You finished 4th and 6th in rounds of the World Endurance Championship in Porsche 956 sports cars. Do you think that now this great performance today will open the eyes of some of the international teams, and you might be able to either take your team into this situation, or perhaps get a drive and really prove your international worth, because he's certainly showing it in terms of skill?
Well, I hope so, Neil. You know, I've been knocking on the door for a long time, and I don't know whether I don't do my PR right or whether some people say I don't look like a racing driver.
What do they look like?
You know, it's it's so often. Yeah, I'd like to think something will happen.
We'll keep our fingers crossed, and we hope that everything goes well for you this afternoon, but certainly a bad situation. And incidentally, before I leave you, the Roland Ratzenberger BMW M3 that spent some time in the pits, that's car number 46, has been pushed to the rear, and so we can expect to see the Rat in another car later this afternoon. We'll have more news of that shortly.
Okay, thanks very much, Neil Compton. Yeah, that car, the 46 car, has been retired, but of course Ratzenberger is cross-ended, so we will probably see him back. There's the 41 car, that's Gary Brabham at the wheel, and in fact Gary Brabham leads the under 2.5 litre class with his co-driver Juan Manuel Fangio.
Well, the Page and Bowkett Nissan having a good run up the inside of them as they head up to the right-hander at Bridgestone.
The placings in that under 2.5 litre class, all BMWs running 1, 2, 3. The 41 car, Brabham and Fangio running first in the class. Second in the class, car 42, Johnny Cicotto. And third in the class, car 45, Ludwig Finnar.
Brancatelli going through there. We're following the number 41 car. Gary Brabham at the wheel, sharing with Juan Manuel Fangio. Good to see Gary back home again and doing this race, of course.
And I don't think, in fact, that you'll find that Brancatelli is very far behind Brabham at the moment. Both lost a couple of laps to the lead-up.
In the small car class, up to 1600 cc's, Toyotas hold the day there at the moment. Cars 90, 91, 92 holding all positions. John Smith, John Faulkner, and the Ratcliffe Gibbs car, 1, 2, 3 in that category.
Let's update you on the Castrol scoreboard. Klaus Ludwig continues to lead. Pierre Dieudonné runs in second spot. The two Texaco cars, 1, 2. Win Percy is third in car number 2. Fourth is John Bower, presently in the number 15 car. Then Terry Shield in the number 30 car runs fifth for the Peter Jackson Nissan team. Sixth spot, John Crook at the wheel of the second of the Mobile Commodores. In seventh spot, 35, Don Smith. Andrew Madecki stepping out of the car. Eighth spot, Gary Brabham, who've just been following. Ninth, 42, Gianfranco Brancatelli down 1 lap. 10th spot, 45, Robbie Francevic and Ludwig Finnar, they're down 2. Lap 59 of 161, the James Hardie 1000 coming to you live on the 7 Network across Australia and New Zealand. There's our third place driver, Wyn Percy, in the Chickadee Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. Wyn at the wheel, taking our race cam up towards the cutting at BP. And Wyn Percy, of course, joining Alan Grice. Had an absolutely horrendous wreck here on Friday. They've been able to get the car back thanks to the TAFE apprentices. And I tell you what, Alan Grice could not have a more capable driver at the wheel of his car today. Wyn Percy is a total professional.
43-year-old Wyn Percy nearly didn't get involved in motorsport. He broke his neck on the eve of his first race. In 1975, a fully recovered Wyn finished runner-up in the British Touring Car Championship, and he was bridesmaid again in 76. Percy joined Scotsman Tom Walkinshaw's team in 1980. Mazda was the choice, and the Weymouth-led Foot collected 3 British titles on the trot. By 85, Walkinshaw had installed Wyn in his Jaguars and Rovers as permanent co-driver. He should have won the European title last year for Rover by 1 digit, but FISA's maths men gave the crown to BMW's Roberto Ravaglia. Walkinshaw had his yellow and blue Commodore ready for 1987 and the World Championship, but alas, it was not to be seen on the track. Percy therefore concentrated on the odd Jaguar sports car outing and a stint in a Raz Sierra for the British Championship at Silverstone, which he duly won. So when you think of pros, Wyn's the go.
You betcha, Winnie Percy, and he's doing just fine out there for the Bob Jane T-Mart's team today. At the moment, another fella who's doing very, very well indeed is young Ludwig Fenauer in the second of the JPS BMW, sharing this car today with former Australian champion Robbie Francevic.
Yeah, and I think Ludwig would be pretty grateful to Francevic as well, who's been pretty much overlooked in the build-up to this race, obviously because of the number of overseas stars that we've got involved here. And the Soper car is in the pits. Goodness me, Pierre Dieudonné, the Texaco car is there. There it is on screen. This car running second on the track, of course, behind teammate Klaus Ludwig at the moment. Will he hold that place? I would doubt it, because Wyn Percy wasn't that far astern of him. Keeping an eye out for Wyn Percy's position on the track.
36 cars now remain in the James Hardie 1000. 3 on the same lap.
48 started.
Almost certainly Percy's going to go through into second place as a result of that, which was a scheduled pit stop, of course. And a nice quick one. No problems. And Dieudonné, I think, stayed at the wheel.
Yes, he did.
Certainly did. And Percy is into second place. So it's Klaus Ludwig leading in the first Texaco car, followed by Wyn Percy in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. And then Pierre Dieudonné in the car on screen, the black Texaco Sierra. Andrew Madecki just up ahead of him, although a lap down, of course. Don Smith at the wheel of that car. Retirees in the race, as Mike just mentioned, there are only 36 cars still up and running. The Maserati it has disappeared. Armin Hahne and Kevin Bartlett. Car 5, of course, the Peter Brock entry, also off the track. Car 9 has retired. Alan Moffat, Andy Rouse in the ANZ Sierra. 11, of course, we saw poor old Larry Perkins in that first lap incident with car 18, driven by Neville Crichton, the Shell Ultra Sierra, put both of them out of business. And not long afterwards, we saw Dick Johnson park the 17 Shell Ultra car off the side of the track, retired. Car 21 has disappeared. That's Graham Crosby and John Billington, the New Zealanders, in their VK Commodore. Car 22 is also out. The Lusty brothers went out in spectacular fashion, as we saw. Car 32 missing in action. Warren Cullen, Gary Sprague, we saw that incident as well. Car 46 has retired. That's the Emmanuel Pirro, Roland Ratzenberger BMW. And car 57, Colin Bond and Lucio Cesario. We saw Lucio put them out of business also. So a lot of cars, a lot of damage. 36 survivors at this stage, but still so far to go. 100 laps plus remaining.
Well, we're watching Pierre Dieudonné coming down the hill, and no doubt about it that the engineer journalist is keeping his end up very well in this car. He's not very far behind the number 35 car, the Medica car, which led the race earlier on, but he hasn't got ahead of him, which I think is quite significant, because we had been led to understand that in Don Smith's hand, that car might not be quite as quick. Well, Pierre still hasn't got ahead of him.
Pierre Dieudonné, fastest lap on the track, is held not by this car but by the other Texaco car. Klaus Niedwitz, just before he came in and handed over to Klaus Ludwig, posted fastest time in the race so far of 2 minutes 22.08.
I think Richard told us earlier on they were a bit worried about the clutch on the other car, and that's one of the reasons why he took it very easily at the start.
They're worried about the clutch on all of the Sierras, and as far as starts are concerned, that's why Niedwitz was so slow off the line. He said before the race even started, when I was talking to him, he said, "I will be very slow off the line. Steve will go quickly, and we'll protect the rear of the car to start with." And that was the plan from the beginning.
Well, the man who's running second in the great race for 1987 is, of course, Win Percy, carrying our Bob Jane T-Mart's race cam. Well, Win, I reckon on Friday you had no idea that you'd be running second today.
No, I think the guys at the technical college did an unbelievable job of the car. I mean, it really was very extensively damaged. And here we are in a competitive car. Fantastic.
How competitive is the car compared to the hot laps you had on Friday?
Well, if anything, I think it's settled down. I'm not used to the power steering that Alan has on this car, and I must admit it took me a couple of days to really feel it home. And then when I thought I was at home, of course, I went and stuffed it, which was fantastic.
Coming down at the bottom into the main straight again, and of course the pace car being out, a lot of drivers fell into a trap there when they weren't quite sure, I don't think, of how the regulations applied.
No, I think you're right. I was waiting to complete at least one lap after the pace car had put its lights out, which is customary. But suddenly the green flags appeared at the top of the hill, and I'm afraid I was told to go for it.
Well, as Gracie says, green means go.
He's bloody right.
Okay, we'll let you go. Thanks, Win, for the brief chat. We'll come back to you later.
Thank you.
Win Percy, a gentleman. Meanwhile, the second Brock Commodore.
The only surviving car, and Brock, is it? Yes, Peter Brock getting into the car. Let's go down to the pits. There's the action as they strap Brock in. Of course, the 05 Commodore out of action, as I mentioned just a few moments ago. We've seen this before, haven't we?
We certainly have. I remember Phil Brock standing in the pits waiting to take over his ride in the second car. Then brother had to step in and say, "Park it, I'm going racing."
Brock says, "I'm ready."
And he's off, Peter Brock. So the 8 times James Hardie winner rejoins the field.
He was in 6th place when he went into the pits, and I don't think he'd have lost that much ground there.
We'll have that for you shortly. That's good to see. Brocky is back out on the racetrack, and he will leave in 10th place. Let's recap the positions for you on the Castrol scoreboard. Klaus Ludwig leads. Win Percy and Gracie run in second. Pierre Dieudonné is third. 4th place is John Bow. 5th spot is, of course, next one up, because the Crook McLeod car goes back. That'll be Georgie Fury and Terry Shield. They're then followed by Don Smith at the wheel of the Oxo Supercube car. Then Johnny Cicotto and Gianfranco Brancatelli. Next on the queue, Gary Brabham and Juan Manuel Fangio. And rounding out the 9 is Francevic and Finnar. Lap 64, 161. James Hardie, 1000. Brock's Mountain.
Might yet be.
You never know. Running in 10th spot after that changeover into the backup car after his own car went out a little earlier this morning. But Brock could well still stamp his mark on the 87 great race. Well, there are many questions still to be answered in this year's James Hardie World Touring Car Championship edition from Mount Panorama. There's the Netcom car, Dennis Hawley, Murray Carter. And Neil Crompton, we have some interesting stats to come from this car today.
Yes, indeed we do, Mike, and this information that we now see on screen is a combination of technologies provided by Netcom and our own race cam people, and we're getting live data out of this motor car. And what we see in the display on the left-hand side of frame is the speed of the motor car, and the right there we have the revolutions per minute. Quite excitingly, down on the bottom left of screen, we have tyre temperature, and that's done on an optic fibre basis. There's a sensor up in the mudguard in each corner of the car, and you can see the tyre temperature readout. What we see in the middle of the screen down the bottom is an accelerometer, and then across to the right is the turbo wastegate temperature of 817 degrees Celsius and turbo boost pressure of 1.2 atmospheres, and across to the top right is the gear that the car is currently in. Now, there is a very small lag factor in this data, but it really is quite fascinating. And this is a world first, bringing information out of a race car, putting it on screen as it happens. And at the moment we have Steve Masterton at the wheel, who makes a return to Group A racing this weekend. It's quite interesting stuff, I'm sure you'll agree.
Certainly is. Yes, I did call Dennis Hawley. In fact, it is Steve Masterton, sharing with veteran Murray Carter, and Murray's been here since the first days in Ford Custom lines. He's driven just about everything at Mount Panorama and thoroughly enjoying his race this year in the turbo Nissan.
I wonder how long it'll be before something like that system, perfected by Netcom, one of Australia's leading data communications companies, becomes standard equipment, where team managers can sit in the pits and monitor all of that kind of information.
Well, Dennis Hawley, who is in fact here, was telling me yesterday that he believes that it cuts testing time in half. The amount of information that you can get out of a car, you can find out purely within a couple of laps whether or not the car is working, and if it's not, where things are going wrong. The other interesting thing is with being able to tell the tyre temperatures, they can tell whether or not they're likely to get a blowout. And they cited the example of Nigel Mansell at Adelaide last year. They maintain that this system would have allowed Nigel Mansell, or the team anyway, to know that that tyre was going to blow and that it was overheating a good 2 laps before it did.
Well, the action is hot on Mount Panorama on the circuit itself, but let me just tell you that weather-wise here, it's getting very, very bleak. The breeze is stiffening even further. It's getting very, very cold, very, very overcast. The clouds look ominous.
The Netcom Nissan is interesting in that the Nissans are only pulling 240 k's down the straight, whereas the Sierra Cosworths are pulling somewhere in the region of 275.
Hey, I got a radar speed readout here. Klaus Ludwig just recently, last lap or so, was clocked at 273 kilometres per hour down the straight. Soper previously, when he was at 267 kilometres per hour. The Oxo car 257. Alan Grice in the Commodore 252.
That's interesting insofar as Soper is 6k slower than Ludwig, and I would have expected that car to be almost exactly the same performance, so it's interesting from that point of view. The other thing with the Soper Dieudonné car is that it's pitting some 5 to 6 laps earlier than the team are expecting it. They expect the cars to be able to do 35, 36, 37 laps between stops, and the car has only managed stints of around about 30 laps. So that all is not quite as well as it seems with that car at the moment, I think.
Here's another man who'd like to know a bit about tyre temperatures, Wyn Percy. He had a tyre go, having run over some debris, at about 230 miles an hour on the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans earlier on this year, and walked away.
Recapping the current positions on our Castrol scoreboard. Race leader is Klaus Ludwig in the Eggenberger car. Second, Wyn Percy in the Commodore.
Third is Pierre Dieudonné in the second of the Texacos. Fourth spot held down by John Bow in the Peter Jackson Nissan. Fifth spot by Terry Shield in the second of the team cars. Sixth spot is Big Donnie Smith and Andrew Medecki's Oxo Supercube car. Seventh spot, Gianfranco Brancatelli in the BMW. He's down 2. Eighth spot, 41, Gary Brabham and Juan Manuel Fangio down 2. Ninth is, of course, now Peter Brock down 2 laps in ninth. And rounding out the 10 is Ludwig Finauer and Robbie Francevic.
.67 laps down, 161 the total race distance. On screen at the moment, car number 90, the Toyota Corolla, which leads the 1600cc class. John Smith and Drew Price, the drivers for this car. And Smithy, of course, no stranger to Mount Panorama, no stranger to class victories here. He's been the flag bearer for Toyota in this category. And not only at Mount Panorama, but in the Touring Car Championship around Australia for several seasons now, doing a great job. Placings in the category, in fact, Smithy leads it from teammate John Faulkner in car 91, and third place held by car 94, Bagnall and Jennings.
Yeah, both these cars, both the first and second car, in fact, have got a lot more power than the third place car because they're running to slightly different specification. The Japanese specification, they have about another 20 brake horsepower, which rather miffed Chris Hodgetts, the British Touring Car Champion, who sorted car 94 out but hasn't actually driven it.
Coming down under the Bridgestone Bridge. I think Drew Price, in fact, is at the wheel at the moment. John Smith started the race. Drew Price, of course, with a long and successful history in kart racing.
The little Toyotas are having things a little bit easier for themselves than they normally do. Underneath the Australian Group A regulations, they tend to run in the up to 2 litre category. That's the Class C, the bottom category, and they're normally competing against the Nissan Gazelle, which gives them some fairly stiff competition because, of course, it's got more power. But running underneath the World Touring Car Championship regulations, it has to be a 1600cc class, and in fact the only competition they do have is the Alfa Romeo 33 of Giorgio Francia and Daniel Toffoli.
You mentioned the Nissan Gazelle. That car, of course, with Mark Scaife driving it, didn't get around lap 1 they had some problem with it. It did go back out again and begin circulating, but I'm not exactly sure where they're placed in the field at the moment. Well down.
When we were down in the pits earlier on, in fact, the team was saying that the car had come in with overheating problems, which we couldn't quite work out why he would have stopped the car on the circuit rather than continue driving it slowly and keep the air running through it. Because, of course, if you stop a car that's overheating, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter because there's no air going through it to cool it down.
Car number 3 is in the pits at the moment. That, of course, is the Peter Jansen, Peter Fitzgerald Commodore VL. I'm not sure whether they had a driver change there or not. I don't see any driver having got out of the car, no.
Doesn't look that way.
Position 17 on the racetrack at the moment, car number 3. And the captain, Peter Jansen, making a long-awaited return to Mount Panorama. It's been a season or two since he's been here. Peter Fitzgerald, of course, the reigning Australian Group E champion.
It's interesting how technology has evolved, and 16 valve cars, 4-cylinder 16 valve cars now lead all of the classes. The Toyota is a 16 valve 1600, the BMW is a 2.3 litre 16 valve unit, and the Ford Sierra Cosworth, that too is a 1600 with a turbo on it.
Well, a lot of cars are going this way primarily because the regulations in regard to fuel emissions are indicative of the fact that you've got to have a better breathing engine, and 16 valves the answer to this, and that's why you'll find a majority of major manufacturers, led by the Japanese and the Germans, are doing just this.
Win Percy at Gracie, of course, proving that it's not necessary to have 16 valves. Brute power and cubic inches will do the job.
Okay, the number 35, Don Smith, Andrew Madecki. Let's go to our Motorcraft pit report.
Yes, and Don Smith's getting out. The original plan for the Oxo team was that Don do another stint, but he's climbed out. He and number 1 driver Andrew Madecki are having a bit of a chat. Meanwhile, the crew is replacing 4 tyres. It's a very casual stop. I'll just see if I can grab Don. Don, any problems?
Yeah, just the battery. The alternator's far and it's let the battery go flat.
Okay, you were going pretty well up into 6th spot. No other problems, I gather?
No, everything else is working good. Just missing all the time, you know. It's breaking down with the electronics. Mechanicals are beautiful. It's just the electronics are playing up because the battery's dead.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew Madecki did indicate, in fact, when they came in for the previous change and Don Smith got in the car, that he was concerned about that problem, and it has come to pass. And so, oh, hello, look at that. Peter Brock in the number 10 car going flat out as Klaus Ludwig continues to lead the race in the Eggenberger Texaco car. Alan Grice, Win Percy at the wheel of their car in 2nd place, then Pierre Dudonné in the 2nd Texaco entry. Glenn Seaton in car 15 is in 4th spot, then George Fury, his Nissan teammate, holds down 5th.
6th spot held by John Franco, Brancatelli and Cicotto, 1 lap down. 7th spot now in the pits, Madecki and Smith in the Oxo entry. 8th, Brabham and Manuel Fangio down 1. 9th spot held by Peter Brock, and he's down 2. 10th spot, 45, Francevic and Finau.
11th spot on the track at the moment, Jim Richards, Tony Longhurst, in fact, 2 laps down in the 44 car. 12th spot is John Giddings in his car, 2 laps down the 2nd Oxo car. Murray Carter, Steve Marston in the wheel, 3 laps down in position 13. Then Gary Scott, position 14, 3 laps down. So is Graham Cameron in car 15, the Commodore.
16th spot, Brian Callahan and Barry Graham, they're down 3. 17th, Moore and Michelle Delcourt down 3. Then 18th is 38 Bill O'Brien and Brian Sampson. 19th is Peter Jansen and Peter Fitzgerald in the number 3 car, they're down 4. 20th spot, Cabbage and Bailey in another Commodore.
21, Kaninowski, Gary Rush in a Commodore, 4 laps down, as are Steve Reed and Trevor Ashby in 22nd position. Tony Mulvihill, Ken Matthews, 23rd position, also 4 laps down. Then the Trevico Ian Tulloch BMW in position 24. Ray Gulson, Graham Gulson, father and son, are 5 laps down, position 25.
26th is Phil Ward and Lyndon Riefmuller in the Mercedes. 27th, John Faulkner and Drew Price, quite a Toyota benefit. Behind them, John Smith and Faulkner. 29th is Andrew Bagnall and Mark Jennings. And 30th spot, Winnie Vaught and Olivier Gruard.
Position 31, Marcus Ostrike, Roland Ratzenberger, car 40. position 32, David Ratcliffe and Mark Gibbs, 8 laps down in their Toyota. Giorgio Francia at the wheel of car number 10 in 33rd spot. Mark Scaife and Grant Jarrett still out there in the 60 car in 34th position, 13 laps down. And Ken Bajan, Graham Bowkett in position 35 after 70 laps in the great race of 1987.
Lap 72 of 161, the James Hardie World Touring Car Championship race from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. And the man who was in a class of his own on the mountain this year is Herr Ludwig, driving the number 7 Eggenberger prepared Texaco Ford, leading this race very, very comfortably. He heads through the top corner and he's driving perhaps the car that everyone wants to race, not only in 87, but potentially in 1988, the Ford Sierra.
At the mention of its name, the opposition starts to frown. The Ford Sierra is a complete racing touring car. Built from the ground up with one purpose in mind, the limited edition RS version is spectacular in its performance. Through the 2-litre 4-cylinder 16-valve twin-cam turbo engine, this beast can produce anywhere from 420 to 480 horsepower depending on boost pressure. That's incredible output from such a tiny package, and the tyres and brakes seem to cope. Even weight is on the side of the Sierra. The class minimum is 1,035 and the cars weigh in at just under 1,100. Whether the rest of the car can handle the pace is what we'll find out later this afternoon.
And they're certainly doing quite well at the moment with Klaus Ludwig, the man who stole pole position for this race yesterday with an absolute blistering 2:16 plus, and of course elected not to run the first part of this race, stepped in on the first pit stop. He's out in front and doing it very comfortably indeed. Well, the World Touring Car Championship has certainly brought any number of overseas journalists and media men to Australia to cover Australia's unique touring car event. One of the best is in the pit studio with Neil Crompton.
Well, you really know how to crawl, don't you, mate? Joining me is Joe Sayward, who, as you said, is one of the foremost international motorsport writers and follows the World Touring Car Championship welcome to Bathurst once again.
Thank you.
And it really is an interesting and great race again this year. Before we have a chat to you about your impressions of the race, just going back to the Don Smith and Andrew Madiki stop, your interpretation at this stage would be that Don hasn't been in the car long enough to do the mandatory third, and therefore another tactical error from the Oxo team, and they'll have to come back in and let Don do some more laps.
Yes, I think he'll have to go in later on. But they were really set back by that pace car incident, and it's very unfortunate that the track is so long. It's 6.2 kilometres long, and on the long tracks in Europe we have more than one pace car. We have sometimes two and maybe even three if it's a long enough track, which means that the cars that are trapped in the pit lane do not lose a whole lap, because that's also affected Johnny Cicotto, because he was right up there at the front.
Okay, so your interpretation of how things are panning out at the moment?
Well, I mean, it was a fantastic first hour and a half, and now, unfortunately, the pace car's rather broken up the action. But, well, it's still close. I think it's 18 seconds or 20 seconds between the leaders, and that's nothing. They've got to come in for a stop. That's 45 seconds with speeding up, slowing down time, so it's by no means over yet.
I'm really getting the impression, Joe, that I can feel a BMW coming on. Do you sense that they're going to be very well positioned at the end of the day?
Yes, I think they've had all kinds of trouble in practice. It's just been a disaster for them. But I've been saying all week that I think they're going to be there at the end, and I'm not going to change my mind now. I'm also quite surprised with the Nissans. They were in all kinds of problem in practice, but they're chugging along there too, and they're...
Well, I think that Freddie Gibson did the right thing with his cars. He decided to really opt for a conservative package very early in the week. He knew on Wednesday that they are out of the ball game in terms of time.
Well, it's all about survival in a 6-hour race. Sheer speed isn't going to get you there necessarily, so if you just keep on plugging away, you can even survive a setback or two.
Can the Eggenberger cars last for 6.5 hours?
I think you better ask me in a few hours' time.
All right, thanks for dropping in. Look forward to chatting to you later on. Joe Savory.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Neil Crompton. We've been following car number 16th. This, of course, is the Gary Scott, John French, Akihiko Nakaya Dulux Auto Colour Mitsubishi, and that's a mouthful, let me tell you. This car started, in fact, from 23rd position earlier this morning, and presently running 13th on the track, so it's a fine performance. And they've very strongly supported the racing program, Dulux Auto Colour. Car looks fantastic, and it's running very sweetly here today.
Yes, indeed it is. In Europe, in fact, the cars haven't run this year so much. They ran in one race, which was the British Grand Prix Support Sprint race, and it was the nearest thing to a Sierra Cosworth there was. The Sturine had been the car to have. People looked on it as the car to have until the Sierra came along. And it's very interesting that the car is nowhere near as quick this year at the mountain as it was last year.
So much for the Mitsubishi. We've got second placed Win Percy pulling into the pits at this very moment for a quick pit stop. Percy will obviously stay in the car.
Interestingly enough, Mike, they haven't bothered to open the bonnet, look at the water or anything like that yet.
Win Percy stays in the car. Cool drink. I'd say he's fired it and is off.
That was a pretty quick stop.
It certainly was.
It was a very quick stop, and it just goes to bear out what we've said about Wynne taking care of a car. There was no tyre problems or anything like that, and he was back out in that race very quickly indeed. Well, now, almost certainly it's going to see him probably drop one place as a result of it, but now the pit stop situation is going to get interesting, because we can't be too far off the leader having to stop, I would have thought, very shortly. Here's Wynne back in the groove again very quickly. The change in the handling between a car that's full of fuel and a car that's empty of fuel is something that he will adjust to, and adjust to quite quickly with the sort of experience that he's got. But it does make a difference. Makes a difference out of braking, and also, of course, if he's going to tap a curb or anything like that, it won't be quite so light, except that, of course, if he does take charge at the back, it's a bit more difficult.
That's dropped him back to third spot on the road at the moment, and looming up behind is, of course, the Nissan Skyline at the present moment. Running in fourth spot is, of course, car number 15, John Bow. and getting very close indeed to the tail here of Win Percy as they sweep across past the Castrol sand trap and drop now down towards the S's.
They would have been the big disappointment of the race, I think, well, certainly up until it started anyway. They'd had a dreadful qualifying session. They just blew one turbo after another, and all the promise that they've shown all year was just in one foul swoop. The Europeans said, well, what's with these Nissans? You know, they don't seem to be doing anything. And they are, in fact, very slow down the straight by comparison with the Sierra Cosworth. The problem with the cars, of course, being the lack of aerodynamic aids, and therefore they're a bit difficult to handle, and they don't seem to go down the straight quite the way that they should. In the pits at the moment is the Ashby Commodore, and that's the Lansvale Smash Repairs car number 39, Steve Reed and Trevor Ashby.
Brake pad change on that car. Gloves very necessary.
Now that's an interesting thing, because I was talking to the man from AP Brakes before the race started and said, now what about brake pads? What's going to happen with them? Because of course they take extra time to change when a pit stop comes along. He was telling me that the Nissans had been practicing them yesterday, and they had managed to change all the brake pads, or the front brake pads, in 35 seconds.
That's incredible.
Well, Win Percy really does have his hands full now, because I'd expected to have seen him got away a little bit, but he hasn't. And I think he's going to have to struggle quite hard to hold on to that third place while he's got a full load of fuel.
As I said earlier, I don't think Alan Grice could have picked a more talented co-driver.
He might have questioned that on Friday. He might have questioned that on Friday.
Yes, I don't think all Gricey did was really just shrug the shoulders and say, well, there's not much you can do about it.
Well, let's face it, he did exactly the same thing, poor old Win, as Alan Moffat did last year with Peter Brock's car. So, it happens to the very best, and of course Win Percy is one of those.
Grice has spent a few himself too, hasn't he?
Yes, he's had the one or two offs, but he's a hard charger, and Win's times are almost identical to Brock's, and that has to be great, particularly if you're going to try and force the pace up the front. Andrew Madecki doesn't enjoy that luxury. Donnie Smith, who owns the Oxo Supercube team, Don's the first to admit he can't stay to the times set by Andrew Madecki, so every time he jumps into the car, the times fall away just a little, and that's a problem that, of course, Hardie drivers have faced over the years when they had their once-a-year race. It's changed this year just a little.
I must say, though, Mike, it has all the ingredients of tremendous drama as this race builds up, with the Singleton car there, the Singleton Commodore, defending, if you like, Australia against the European onslaught.